Bismillahi walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We'd like to welcome everyone to our open house today for the Qalam Seminary, where we thought that we could provide an opportunity for everyone to get a little insight into what exactly the seminary is, what are the different options that are available for different people to be able to study with Qalam at the seminary, what some of the curriculum is, also to hear from the insights and the experiences of not only the instructors, the teachers, but also from students and graduates about what studying at the seminary is like, what it provides, and what motivates students to study at the seminary. And then, inshallah, we'll also have a little bit of time for discussion in regards to the application process to the seminary. And inshallah, we look forward to your questions and being able to answer your questions to the best of our ability, inshallah. So we have a few different segments to our program here today. The very first segment is going to be just an overview of the seminary and exactly what the seminary is, what it entails, what are the different options for study that are available at Qalam, at the seminary. So inshallah, in the very first segment, we have two of our instructors, two of our teachers that are going to be joining me in discussing the different opportunities, the different levels of study, the curriculum at the seminary. Inshallah, we have with us Ustad Ubaidullah Ahmed, who is the instructor of the Arabic program at the Qalam Seminary, which is the very first year of study. And one of the first options that is available to students to take advantage of and to benefit from. And inshallah, with us, we also have Ustada Fatima Let, who is an instructor at the seminary as well in the second year of the seminary program. She also teaches one of the enrichment classes in the Islamic studies classes in the first year, and she's an instructor in the second year of the seminary. And also both of them, mashallah, Ustad Ubaidullah and Ustad Fatima, are both graduates from the Qalam Seminary as well. So alhamdulillah, they provide a unique point of view and a perspective, having studied there and now teaching there as well. So alhamdulillah, I'm joined by Ustad Ubaidullah and Ustad Fatima, and we'll go ahead and get started with the very first segment of the program, which is going to be discussing, as I mentioned before, more so the program itself, the curriculum, and the different opportunities that are available for people to apply to and to study at Qalam. So I wanted to start with Ustad Ubaidullah first to tell us briefly about the first year of the program. So to start off the conversation, we have 5 years worth of studies and academics at the Qalam Seminary. And this is designed and modeled after the traditional methodology, the classical approach to Islamic studies, where someone first really commits themselves to studying the Arabic language, classical Arabic, with an emphasis and a focus on the Quran, which I'll ask him to comment on more. And then from that point on forward, students progress in their Islamic studies, because now that they have the tool of the Arabic language available to them, they're able to move forward and progress forward. So if a student comes to us, which is going to be the case with the majority of people, I imagine, that they yet do not have the grasp of the classical Arabic language, then they first will go through what we call at Qalam year one, the first year of study, academic study at the Qalam Seminary. So Ustad, if you could tell us briefly a little bit about, I imagine, when people hear learning Arabic, there's a lot of thoughts that go through their mind, right? Because somebody might be thinking, well, I'm going to learn how to converse in modern Arabic, where, like kind of, Rosetta Stone, or if I'm a tourist going to, Egypt or something like that, and I'm going to be able to learn about how to converse with people in Arabic, versus maybe somebody thinks of, studying classical literature. So they're reading and studying a lot of poetry and different kinds of literature in a classical language. What exactly is our focus at Qalam when we teach the Arabic language?
بسم الله الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين. So to answer the question, I think it's important to frame it in light of objectives, and I think that will clarify most things. If we just talk about a language, first of all, if we just say Arabic and you put the time frame of a year, automatically everyone should understand that there has to be some filtering process, right? You can't learn an entire language in 9 months or 10 months. So automatically there's some filtering. And this is true for anything. Like when we talk about our year 2 or our years 3 through 5, whenever we're talking about these subjects, we're filtering it with some lens so that we can accomplish the goals in that set amount of time. So the filter here that I would say is we're really trying to prepare students to be able to continue into their studies at the Qalam Seminary. And what does that require? And this kind of goes into those admissions requirements of year 2. So ultimately, from years 2 through 5, students will be engaging in their study of Islam through Arabic texts. Now that's an important thing I think that often gets missed, is that at the Qalam Seminary, all your source material is in Arabic, and the class is still conducted in English. Like 99% of classes are conducted in English, um, but the source material is in Arabic. So that's what the students need to be. That's the Arabic that they need. How do they interact with the source material? How do they read their textbook for that class, right? And that's what the year 1 prepares them to do. Now, in addition to that, I don't want to just make it seem like Arabic is at Qalam is only a means to that end, even though I think that's a very powerful end in terms of preparing, like creating a more literate student, a student that can, in theory, go on to study from scholars and be able to interact with a lot more resources so that they can further progress, right? So that's one major objective. The second objective is more personal. And it's kind of a hybrid objective, and it's very personal to people, but also it serves into the objective of furthering your Islamic education. So the personal objective is everything is focused around the Quran, right? You can ask any student that you ask that enters our program, even if they want to continue studying into years 2 through 5, and they understand that I don't have the tools to be able to do that, and this program is going to give me that. But then the second thing is the Quran, is understanding the Quran. Every single student that comes in says, why do you want to learn Arabic? I want to be able to understand the Quran. I want to be able to understand the Quran. In some fashion, that's the statement that is communicated. And then the secondary objective always is, and I want to be able to continue in the seminary. So that objective of understanding the Quran is a very personal one. The hope is that by the end of the year, students understand the Arabic language. They understand how to translate the Quran effectively and efficiently and clearly. They understand the complexities of the Arabic language. They understand the nuance of it. And then they're able to also apply that in their reading of classical Arabic texts. So those would be the two main objectives, one being very much a means to an end, and the second one being very personal to people in wanting to have a deeper relationship with the Quran. And really, through learning the Arabic language, the hope is that that also serves a means to that connection with Allah, and it's not just the goal in and of itself. So one thing I would clarify is that Arabic at the Qalam Seminary is never a goal in and of itself, right? It's never like keep learning Arabic. And you'll see, and even in how class is conducted, a lot of the filter that is used there as well is that this element of Arabic or studying this in more detail is not really going to serve these two functions. At that point, it seems like we're just doing an intellectual academic exercise. So maybe we don't need to spend too much time there. So we'll filter everything through. Is it going to serve these two objectives? Understanding the Quran, having that relationship and connection with the Quran, and being able to read and translate Arabic texts.
Very good. So to that particular end, one of the things that I wanted to also touch on here as we start this conversation about studying at the seminary is that, as I mentioned earlier, that we have 5 years of study that are available at the seminary, 5 years of a dedicated curriculum. That being said, while of course we always aspire to more and more, where we don't only even want students to study just for 5 years, we want students to continue to study for the entirety of their lives, right? That's the goal and the objective. Min al-mahdi ila lahad, from the cradle to the grave, as it's said. So we want people to study for their entire lives, but in a dedicated manner. At the seminary, we have 5 years of academic study, and of course we'd love to see students go through the entirety of the 5 years of the curriculum, as mashallah Ustad Fatima did. That being said, one of the things that's very important, and an important part of our philosophy of education at Qalam, is understanding that different people have different circumstances, different situations, different levels of interest within studying the deen, and that they also have different kind of opportunities available to them. So to that particular end, we have tried to, and alhamdulillah, I would say that we've been, by the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we've been able to implement this idea where we've created these strategic exit points during that process of education for people in different situations. So Ustad Ubaidullah just said something very powerful, and that is, on one side, you are learning classical Arabic, so you will possess that skill and that ability, and you will be able to read, you will be able to read traditional and classical Islamic literature and understand what it says, because now you have that tool of Arabic available to you. But there's also a very focused concentration on understanding and comprehension of the Quran. So to that particular end, if there is someone, and you're going to get to hear from some of our students, that if someone is only able to study for a year and they don't know Arabic, then when they leave after a year of study at Qalam, at the seminary, they're able to now not only read and translate classical Arabic or traditional literature, but they've also grasped a very good working knowledge of the Quranic language, Quranic Arabic. So they're able to come and study for a year and leave with something very practical spiritually for their deen, for their religion, and that is that they will have a meaningful relationship and a meaningful interaction with the Quran going forward. So kind of going forward with that same concept, we have the second year. Obviously, the next step would be the second year of study at the Qalam Seminary, what we, at the seminary call year 2. Now, I wanted Ustad Fatima to kind of comment on what year 2 is and what it entails, or I'm actually going to ask Ustad Fatima more so to comment on years 3 through 5 as well, the Alamiya program. But before I get there, while the next step obviously is going to be year 2, even for somebody who wants to study longer, the whole 5-year curriculum, but at the same time, we also then understand that there are people who might have different, once again, life situations and circumstances, different level of interest, and they have maybe more limited time. Or also there's the factor that they have another career, they have some other line of work, they have some other area of interest where they'd like to devote and dedicate themselves, but they want a good working knowledge of the fundamentals of Islamic studies. They want to be able to have read some of the usul of fiqh and usul of hadith and ulum of Quran and tafsir and hadith and fiqh and aqidah and seerah. They want to have read, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, the explanation of the Quran, the explanation, understanding of the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, ﷺ, and how to interpret them. They want to know they want to know how to perform the essential acts of worship in Islam, tahara and ibadah, from a fiqh, from a technical point of view. So they want to know these things, but they're not necessarily, maybe at this time or in general, looking to go further, deeper into Islamic scholarship and Islamic studies. So the second year of studies at the Qalam Seminary are also another strategic exit point, where someone could do year one, as Ustad Ubaidullah was talking about. And now that they have the Arabic language, they could do the studies in year two, and then they could strategically exit from that point. Number one. Number two is, even though this is a conversation that they're going to talk about more later in the program when we get to applications, nonetheless, if someone already through personal study, one-on-one tutoring, or previously they had participated in some Arabic studies, if they already have a good grasp, a working knowledge of the Arabic language, they do also have the ability to come to Qalam, apply to the seminary, and they are able to take a placement exam where if they are deemed to have the requisite level of Arabic, they possess the working knowledge of the Arabic language that is needed in order to study year two, they can actually, quote unquote, as we say, test out of the first year of study and go directly into the second year of study. But then the second year of study is kind of like its own standalone, it is its own kind of standalone opportunity where somebody could come, dedicate themselves to that 1 year of study very productively, and then be able to decide whether they want to continue with their education, which of course is something we hope for. But nonetheless, we also understand that somebody's not able to go forward with that. And so before Ustad Fatima comments on the next phase of the study, I wanted to very briefly explain what the year two of education at Qalam looks like. So at year two, we have a concept that we basically call a ta'sis, which in the Arabic language means building of a foundation, establishing of a foundation. When it comes to studying Islam, when it comes to Islamic studies, and that's a very broad, general, kind of vague term, what is what is the foundation and what exactly does Islamic studies entail? So when we talk about Islamic studies, there are a few areas of focus. Number one, first there are the four foundational sciences, usul, what we call usuluddin. And that involves four things. Number one is what we call aqidah, the fundamentals of Islamic beliefs, theology, creed, the fundamentals of Islamic beliefs. Number two is what we call ulum al-Quran, which is what Ustad Fatima teaches. Ulum al-Quran and usul al-tafsir, which is the history of the Quranic text. How was it revealed? How was it preserved? How was it maintained? How is it read? How is it understood? And then along with that, we also have usul al-tafsir, which is now the principles and the science of interpreting the Quran. Number three, we have mustalah, or also known as usul al-hadith. What are hadith? How were they preserved and documented and narrated and transmitted, and how do we interpret them? And then number four, we have usul al-fiqh, which are the principles of Islamic jurisprudence. How do we derive Islamic law from the Quran and from the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and what other resources, if any, are available to us? And then how do we formulate rulings within Islam? So those are the four foundational sciences, what we call the usuluddin. And then we have four areas of what we call internally kind of the content, right? Now the four areas of actual where we apply those principles. So number one, we study the tafsir of the Quran, and we go through the entirety of the tafsir of the Quran. Number two is that we study hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. We go through the Arba'in of Imam al-Nawawi and also portions of Riyadh al-Salihin. We also study the seerah, the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the prophetic biography. But rather than just listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube series, you're actually reading classical scholarly work on the biography and the life and the times of the Prophet ﷺ. Number three, we study tazkiyah, the literature of the traditional scholars in spiritual personal development, purification of the heart and personal development from an Islamic point of view. And fourthly, we go through what we call fiqh, where we go through classical works in the fiqh of tahara, purification, prayer, fasting, charity, hajj, and even the laws of transactions, what is permissible and not permissible in financial transactions. So those are the 4 areas where we actually now apply the principles. And when you put these 8 subjects together, that is the curriculum for year 2. Now, as Ustad Ubaidullah said, a very good way to look at it, and maybe, I have a bit of the tendency to draw the conversation out a little bit. So to explain it in a nutshell, what is the objective? The objective is that someone has a very good, solid foundation in Islamic studies. And what that means for them is, number one, they are going to be in a position where they will be able to engage with Islamic scholarship for the rest of their lives. They are going to be able to open up a book, sit with scholars and teachers, and be able to study further for the entirety of their lives. Number two, they're going to be in a position where they have a good enough of a foundation where they're going to be able to provide benefit to others. To give you a few practical examples of what that looks like is, a brother is going to be in a position where he's going to be able to be a khatib in his community. People are going to be able to, conduct youth programs, teach Sunday school, teach Islamic studies at a more fundamental level in the community. And they're going to be able to provide that benefit to other people. And so those are some of the objectives that we come out of that with is you have a very good foundation and a working knowledge of Islamic studies that you can provide people with benefit from. And number two is you yourself have the kind of foundation where you will now be able to build going forward on that foundation. Even if that's not with us at Qalam in a full-time capacity, you're always going to have the ability to be able to open up the books of Islamic scholarship, of religious knowledge, and be able to study forward. Once someone has completed that second year of Islamic studies.
Sorry, before we continue, I just wanted to add something. One thing, just my personal experience having studied that year, another thing that I felt that I took away from it that might be helpful for people is that, a lot of times Sheikh Al-Nasser, as he just mentioned, many sciences, and you might have taken classes on these different sciences or introductions, some seminars in different places, and even if you've done all of them in a scattered manner, when you do it together in 1 year, and when you do it with teachers full time, what you see is how all of these are connected, and they're all related, and they all serve one objective. So, and they all serve in explaining Islam, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is, and that's, we say Islamic sciences, and all of the things that you study in there, you can see how, when you study Mustalah al-Hadith, how that ties into another science, how everything has these kind of like this interconnection, and you really get an appreciation for all the sciences and how they're connected. And one of the examples that I'll share with you that really, spoke to that really showed what I gained out of the seminary was actually while I was a student there, when we went for Umrah, and we were like maybe 3/4 of the way through the year. And we were at Umrah. I don't know if you remember the Sheikh, but we were at breakfast, and I think we had just completed our Umrah, and a few people had showed up, and they were like still in ihram, and they were they'd hugged someone who was wearing like itar or fragrance, and there was like a discussion, and you and Mufti Kamani were talking about, after the person left, of course, man, that person probably should have stayed away from their itar, and you were going into the reasons why, maybe it was problematic, and Mufti Kamani was like, oh, it's probably okay for this reason. And there was a discussion that they had, a very kind of, as Sheikh likes to say, nerdy academic discussion that I definitely had nothing to contribute to at all, but I could follow their conversation because I had learned the foundations of the sciences. So when they say this is an example of XYZ, I've learned what XYZ is.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to go and do that necessarily, to go and derive rulings, but I can understand the conversation when it's happening, and that's actually a very powerful tool. And the second thing I wanted to say was that I purposely omitted this part of the first year curriculum because I wanted to address it after Sheikh talked about the foundational Islamic sciences. Another thing that we cover in the first year of the program is a primer to these sciences.
Yeah.
So students are going to spend the bulk of their time in the second year, really deep diving into all these foundational sciences. And what we try to do in the first year is that give students a primer in English through an English text, through all the teachers make these really nice presentations, English text, English medium of instruction. They get a brief introduction to those sciences so that when they go to the following year, when they go to year 2 and they study it in depth, they've actually heard of it before. It's not all brand new, but they've learned these concepts at a basic level. So now when they go in depth, they're not seeing it for the first time. That hopefully it's solidifying a little bit more. And the other objective there is also that if a student leaves after the first year, as Sheikh mentioned, that there's exit points. You can just study Arabic and leave. That you didn't just learn Arabic, but you also got some understanding of other Islamic sciences that is absolutely necessary if you're going to be reading and studying the Quran at a deep level. Right? You have to have an understanding of other sciences. Otherwise, it's just an incomplete study. Everything has to be supplemented. I think Sheikh froze. Okay. Okay, so I guess we had some connection issues with Sheikh Abdul Nasser. He should be back soon. But I think the next conversation, the next step would be talking about years 3 through 5. And typically these open houses, really the students that we're trying to talk to here are prospective students to the year 1 and year 2 program. So we spend the bulk of our time talking about those two things. But we definitely wanted to mention where can a student go? What are your options after you study year 2, right? So we do have a 5-year seminary. So we have years 3 through 5. And if we're talking about the exit points again, talking about the example I gave when we did a session like this a little while ago was the idea of a train, right? It's going on a journey, on a path, and you have a few stops where you can get off. And then you could come back at a later time and continue your journey, but you do have stops you can get off at. The first stop would be after 1 year of Arabic, you can get off. You could take whatever you learned with you and live your life. Or you can get back on the train or continue on the train to the next stop, which would be completing year 2. Again, it's a whole complete curriculum in and of itself. You can get off after year 2 and take what you learned and live your life and live, inshallah, a meaningful, productive life. And then the next stop is not after year 3 or year 4, but the next stop after that is to complete the program, to complete the 5 years. So it's not that after each year you can just leave, because now between years 3 and 5, there's building that happens of skills and subjects. So Ustadha Fatima can speak to that. Just the general outline of years 3 through 5, and what would motivate a student to continue from year 2 to continue the entire program, and maybe what motivated you as well.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma, Rabbi zidni ilma, Rabbi zidni ilma. So the curriculum for years 3 through 5, kind of like what Ustad Abdullah mentioned, is that there's the only exit point for years 3 through 5 is completing year 5, inshallah. So the curriculum and the way that it's structured and broken down is that when you get to year 3, year 2 was your foundational Islamic studies. So year 2, you were building your foundation, you were learning about all the Islamic sciences and things of that nature. And the nature of a foundation is that you build something on top of that. So when you get to year 3, that's where you're coming into the more advanced Islamic studies. So that's where you will go more in depth when we cover books of tafsir. You go more in depth to the different tafsirs and going through different scholars and their different expertise, and really looking at their expertise and how they've applied it to different ayat and so on and so forth. And then you will go to hadith. And in this year, we covered the book Mishkat al-Masabih, and we use so basically what I like to think about in terms of Mishkat is like it's a primer to how your life will be when you get to year 4, because of having to take other sources, other supplementary sources, and really read those to help you understand the book that you're learning in the classroom. And so that supplementary source is called Mirqat, and that's used where Mufti Kamani, he teaches this class, so Mufti Kamani will teach Mishkat, and he will use Mirqat as like just bringing side points or whatever the case may be, but the student is expected to have read those pages that correlate with the different hadith that they'll be covering for that day. And then we will cover in this particular year fiqh as well. And the fiqh book that we're covering in this year is Sharh al-Wiqaya. And that is taught by Mufti Muntasir. And the thing about fiqh is that it's not just teach, because you will learn fiqh in year 2. So, but in year 3, you're learning the methodology. You're learning how things are derived. You're learning the sources. You're learning which hadith that like the Ahnaf bring, why they bring this, what was going through someone's mind when they said this and that. So you're actually road mapping to the conclusion. You're not just given the answer. You're being taken on a journey through this book and understanding the entire methodology of how these conclusions have come about and why we have certain rulings, the rulings that we do have. And then lastly, in year 3, you have Shahr al-Aqaid, which is a logic and philosophy class that is taught by Dr. Mas'ud. And this is the only class that we have in the seminary that both the book, in the entire seminary, so entire 5 years, that both the book that you learn from is in Arabic and the teacher who is teaching teaches in Arabic. And so this class brings a lot of different skills. It brings your understanding of logic and philosophy, obviously, because that's the nature of the book, but also develops that listening skill, that Arabic listening skill, and it develops your understanding, because you're not just learning like how to say letters through Arabic, you're learning logic and philosophy through Arabic. And so it is a bit challenging, but it's challenging you in your different just developmental skills. And so that is the conclusion of year 3. Now, year 4 is what we call the Dawra Hadith year. And so that is the year where we go through the major collections of ahadith. And in addition to that, so we go through the major collections of ahadith majority of the day. And then in addition to that, we also cover other Islamic studies subjects. So for example, the fiqh that is covered in this year is called Bidayatul Mujtahid, and it is a comparative fiqh text. So before in year 3, it was primarily a Hanafi text, and now actually a Hanafi text. And now in year 4, you go through a more comparative fiqh text, and that is taught by Sheikh Nasir. In addition to that, you also go through inheritance law and being able to understand and learn that through different texts as well. Then when you get to year 5 is the year of what I like to call wrapping everything up, putting everything together, putting everybody in there, like everybody knowing what fields what they can do, really pushing your talents, really pushing your intellectual mind, I would say. And in year 5, what happens is that the main bulk of year 5 is your questions. So there are questions that are given throughout the year, and you are expected to answer them in a very particular format and method and manner. And so it's not just simply answering this fiqh question, it's more so the research that you've done behind it, and then presenting the question in a way that is understandable to someone who has never studied fiqh in their life. Right? So someone who doesn't know any idea of what fiqh is, where it goes, how it plays, what are its foundations, nothing. So you've done this extensive research through these classical books, but now you have to present it in a way that is digestible for every single human. And I think that develops a very, very, very important skill that brings together all 5 years of your studies, because you went through this journey of really developing yourself academically. But because at the end of your 5 years, a lot of what the different students go off to do is serve as educators, serve as imams, serve in different positions of leadership in their communities, it's important to be able to articulate that which you've learned in a way that is understandable for every single person. In addition to that, there are different, the year 5 is fun because it kind of switches a little bit. Instead of the teachers doing the teaching, now the students are the ones teaching. So you go through different books, like for example, for tafsir, you go through Baydawi, and the students are expected to prepare a certain section and teach it to the class, and then the teachers will guide and give their feedback accordingly. So that's Tafsir Baydawi. Then you have Hadith, which is Fatul Bari, and then you do Islamic, you do Fiqh, which is Abdul Muhtar, and then you do Usul Fiqh, which is Husami, and then you have the Arabic grammar and morphology, the whole entire poem of Alfiyat Ibn Malik. So that is all 5. That's years 3 through 5, and it just wraps up so beautifully. In my opinion, it wraps up so beautifully and really solidifies everything that you've learned throughout the 5 years of the journey of being in the seminary. It's not that every single subject is just one off and now you don't know where you place this and place that. Everything builds off of each other, and then at the end is brought around full circle. As for your second question as to why do some people continue to go through these 3 to 5, because 3 to 5 is a big commitment. It's not just that you can say, like, I want to sign on for year 3. If you sign on for year 3, you're signing on for year 3, you're signing on for year 4, and you're signing on for year 5. And so a lot of people, it just depends on the person, to be completely honest. I know that, like, in my personal experience and my personal reasoning into why I continued was, one, because I felt that I needed to continue. Just year 2 it was a lot, and it just showed me how much I didn't know, and how much I wanted to know more. And then serving in different positions in the community, you realize that there are certain qualifications that it's very important for you to have, especially if you want to continue to serve in the community. So a lot of my classmates who graduated and a lot of the upcoming class, they serve in various positions in the community. They serve as imams, they serve as, youth directors with assistant imam responsibilities. Myself, I serve as one of the female religious leaders, meaning like basically a female imam at one of the communities in Atlanta. I just do not lead any prayers. But in terms of developing all of the education of the masjid, that is my main responsibility, in making sure that we have fiqh classes, making sure that we have tafsir classes, making sure that, teenagers are learning their tahara properly. All of these things is like part of my responsibilities. And I wouldn't be able to do that had I not finished throughout this program. And then you have people who don't serve in the masjid, but rather they serve in institutions like this, where they teach, higher Islamic studies. They may teach tafsir, tafsir Jalalain, or you have people like Brother Amir, who serves in his community as a youth director, but he brings a lot of Islamic academia to his masjid, especially for teens, and bringing that level of knowledge higher, so that when we keep going in the Qalam Seminary, we're able to up our level of Islamic education as well, because now we're producing more and more people who are not coming in with a foundational knowledge, but who actually have a higher level of education. So that is years 3 through 5.
Very good. So I had some technical difficulties there a little bit earlier, but when, Ustad Ubaidullah made a particular point in regards to year 2, and one of the things that I also wanted to mention was that what Ustad Ubaidullah was mentioning about his own personal kind of reflection about what the second year of education provides for a student is exactly what he said, that where somebody might not be able to, necessarily be able to derive all the rulings and be able to, provide at a very extensive level to their community, like what Ustadha Fatima was mentioning she does in the community as the female teacher, the female resident scholar of a community, or an imam might be able to provide to their community. But they're able to participate in the conversation, meaning they're able to understand what's going on. They're able to follow the conversation. And that's a very practical way to describe what I was talking about, that after completing the second year, someone is now in a position where they're always going to have access to Islamic scholarship. They're going to understand what they're talking about. And one of the things I wanted to mention about the second year of study as well is that somebody might come in and say, I'm really just interested in tafsir. And, there's 2 periods of tafsir and a period of ulum al-Quran, but, there's these other periods about hadith and usul al-fiqh, and I'm really just interested in Quran and tafsir. What somebody has to understand is that when you start getting into, when you listen to, again, a podcast or a YouTube lecture, something is being distilled all the way down and processed and then packaged and delivered to you in a very specific form. But when you go into traditional Islamic studies and you want to open up a tafsir book and read it for yourself, there's going to be a hadith that complement that verse that are being talked about. And then there's footnotes commenting on the hadith that is complementing the verse that you're trying to understand. And if you don't have a working knowledge of how hadith works, you're not going to get half of the explanation of that verse. So regardless of what it ends up being that you really further yourself in, there's no doing it without a foundation. There's no doing it without a foundation. That's like somebody building a house and being like, I don't cook a lot. I'm not really a kitchen kind of person. So I really don't need a gas line and a water line and all that and drainage and everything. I mainly just need a place to stay. And it's like, you do understand that if you don't have the proper, stuff, I'm going to say stuff, that is not the technical term, all right? If you don't have the proper stuff put in to your foundation when you're building the house, the gas lines and the drainage and the sewage and the water and the pipes and everything, if you don't have all that stuff put in, you're never going to be able to do anything in the kitchen. You're never going to be able to do anything. You don't have the ventilation. You don't have anything. You're not going to be able to use the microwave. You're not going to be able to even turn on the water and wash a cup. You're not going to be able to even boil some water on the stove. You have nothing. So that's why that foundation is so important, that extensive foundation. That's number one. The other thing is that, there are different needs in our community. There are different needs in our community, and we need a bunch of people fulfilling all the different needs in our community. We have Sunday school, weekend schools, we have after school programs, we have youth groups, we have Friday khutbahs, not just at the masjid. We have the second khutbah, the third khutbah, we got the MSA khutbah, we got the little musalla place that needs a khatib. We need somebody teaching some classes and halaqas and youth groups and sisters study groups and so on and so forth. There's so many different needs, and we need a plethora of people fulfilling all the different needs at the different levels. So studying at that level where it puts you at the end of the second year of our curriculum produces someone who will be very, very useful and very beneficial within the community. And like I said, somebody who's going to be able to continue forward. And then what Ustada Fatima talked about in terms of years 3 through 5, she gave, mashallah, a very thorough explanation, subject by subject, exactly what you're going to be doing. But the way to kind of round it out and the way to summarize it, if I may, is that years 3 through 5 are about reaching a point of Islamic scholarship. You are now going to be able to have such profound depth in your own religion, and you're going to be able to provide a lot. You're going to be a very important resource for people in the community going forward, because you have reached that point of Islamic scholarship, having read the books of hadith, the advanced books of fiqh, the advanced books of Islamic philosophy and the aqidah. You're going to be able to understand and grasp all of that. And what Ustad Fatima was talking about in terms of year 5, and she spoke about it, mashallah, very beautifully, that it's the year of kind of rounding everything out. Not only are students presenting and the teachers are auditing them now as they present, but at the same time, those questions that she talked about, in a year, we aim for students to answer 100, and these are academic questions that require them to do hours upon hours, sometimes days and days of research, pulling resources, quoting all their sources, and compiling together a very formal answer that is actually quite impressive. And they do all of that within the 5th year of their studies here. And theoretically, if somebody has done some Islamic studies elsewhere, they could potentially even test out of year 2 I think that only happened once or twice with the hundreds of students that we've had at Qalam. So it's not normal, it's not common, but nonetheless, theoretically, it is within the realm of possibility that somebody could test somewhere later on directly into the program. But of course, that would require a little bit more, interviewing of the student and really knowing exactly where they studied and what they studied and where they're coming from. There were a few questions that were posed here that some of them I know are applications related, but I thought that we could just tackle just a couple of quick questions before we move to the second part of the program. The first question for Ustada Fatima that was presented here, and that is, there were a number of folks who posted questions saying that, maybe they're not able to come here in person. Ustada Atifa, towards the end of our open house, inshallah, in just a little while, is going to be talking probably a lot more about that. But nonetheless, I understand that with online programs, people sometimes log on and log off, and I don't want them to kind of get left without their question, being addressed at least at some level. So, Ustada Fatima, if somebody's primary restriction and limitation is them not being able to physically be in Dallas to study at the seminary, so what exactly are there opportunities to study?
So we actually offer our classes online as well. And this upcoming semester in the fall, inshallah, we'll be offering our Arabic program online as well. The thing is, though, the Arabic program will not be offered in a part-time capacity. It will only be offered in a full-time capacity, and I can let Ustad Ubaydullah speak more on that. But in terms of our classes from years 2 to 5, we offer them online. You're able to choose which classes you want to take at that particular time. But like what Sheikh Nasser mentioned before, it's important to keep in mind that you are expected to complete each year before you move on to the next year. So you will not pick and choose classes in year 2 and then pick and choose classes in year 3 and year 4, dibble dab here and there. You have to pick classes within each year, complete that year, and then you're able to advance to the next year. And in the application process, which Ustad Atfa will talk about more at the end, you have the option of choosing online. And then once you go through the entire application process, at the end, when you've confirmed your acceptance, then someone will be in contact with you and they will help you pick which classes are best for you. And in addition to like going over schedule and how that works, we have a dedicated TA, especially for year 2, for online classes. And that person checks in and does reading, because a lot of what is important in our class structure is the reading ability and building that reading comprehension. So they read with you and exams, all those things. So it is almost like the on-site program. There are certain leadways that we've given to online students in the sense that, for example, if an assignment is due on Monday for the online students, that assignment will be due on Wednesday, just because we know that it's possible that online students could be one day behind in recordings.
Very good. So Ustad Fatima already answered the second question that I was going to ask her. So perfect. So yeah, as Ustad Fatima mentioned, online opportunities are available. So if somebody just can't physically be in Dallas, you can actually study with the Qalam Seminary online, years 1 through 5. And there was the second question that she already answered about part-time versus full-time. Year 1 can only be done, it can be done online, but it's going to need to be done full-time. And Ustad Ubaydullah, why is that, if you could explain? Because folks always wonder, well, why can't I just do it part-time?
So it's interesting because we didn't used to offer this program online. This will be the first time we're offering it online. So it used to be Wising It online. Now that we're online, the follow-up question is, why can I do it part-time? And the answer to that question is that, every other year it's subject-based. So you can take just hadith, you can take just tafsir. But the way the Arabic program is structured is that basically the whole day is working towards an end goal. And each day we're taking steps forward. So you wouldn't be able to just take 2 periods because the entire day is like 1 period or 1 subject.
So it's kind of like Legos.
Yeah, and that instead of thinking of it like other years, you can split it up into 5 subjects. Really, the Arabic you can split it into one big subject that we're just tackling every day, and really it doesn't split too well.
So yeah, so what you do in the 4th hour of class on that day is building directly what you did on the 2nd hour.
Absolutely.
And then what you're doing in the
kind of
1st hour, the next, and what you're doing the next day in the 1st hour is building upon what you did the previous day in the 4th hour. So if you try to split that up, you're just not really achieving anything. So, but years 2 through 5, you can actually do online and part-time. You could even do on-site and part-time. And those opportunities and how we exactly go about that, that's a discussion in the application process, but know that that is a possibility. And then the last question that I'll take, and then inshallah we'll move on to the next part of our program, is that because this question is going to keep on coming up repeatedly, and that is the question about, are we going to be having classes? Are we going to physically be having classes on site in the fall, or is it going to continue to be online? So the first thing I will say to that particular question is that the two are not mutually exclusive. We actually have in the past been having classes physically on site, and the classes for years 3 through 5 have been going on online at the same time concurrently. So alhamdulillah, we have the technology, we have the setup, we have the mechanisms, we have the, the staff and the faculty to make that possible. So classes will be online, and classes could still physically be in person. Now, will they be resuming in the fall in person and on site? Then when it comes to that, right now, obviously everybody understands the nature of the situation. It's impossible to speak with any kind of guarantee, but our intent is, inshallah, to attempt to resume classes physically on site in the fall. Of course, we're implementing different safety and health precautions and measures with maybe larger classrooms and smaller number of students, social distancing, maybe even to some degree trying to, I'm trying to remember exactly what the word is, but staggered, there we go, trying to even stagger the classes so that all students are not moving about campus at the same time. And this is all barring there not being, inshallah, binillah, we all make dua for well-being, that there isn't some kind of more severe situation. But in the case that we do not have a more severe situation and things are going well, inshallah, from a public health point of view, we would like to resume classes in the fall on site, but the online options are still going to be totally and completely available, inshallah, binillahi ta'ala. There are some more questions about the typical time commitment that this would require on a weekly basis. It really depends on what the student is doing in terms of part-time or full-time, but a full-time student of knowledge at the Qalam Seminary, a full-time student will be in class about 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And the average amount of time that requires outside of class depends really on the student and the nature of the class that you are taking. But it's fair to assume that it would take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours outside of the classroom, depending on the student. So that's kind of the commitment that you're looking at. You're looking at about 30 hours of class time, and then potentially another 7 to 15 hours worth of personal study, whether you want to call that homework or preparation or follow-up, whatever you want to call that. But that's a typical time commitment. And in terms of our tuition and expenses, what is the typical breakdown in terms of tuition and expenses? The full-time tuition at Qalam is $6,500. We do have opportunities available for scholarships. Nonetheless, the full-time tuition is $6,500. If a student is part-time, then that is, in accordance with that. That is broken down if they are part-time, obviously. And in terms of the typical living expenses, Ustad Fatima, if you could, because Ustad Fatima is, along with myself, part of, the registrar and scholarship and finance team, if you could comment on what is the typical budgeting that somebody can kind of guesstimate. And of course, that's going to vary from person to person, but just a very typical profile of a student by themselves.
For a student by themselves, if you're not going to have any roommates or anything like that, then you can budget. Actually, things have gone up in life, so you can budget about like $1,200 a month, $1,300 a month. That's including like your rent, utilities, everything, your food, gas, stuff like that. Well, there's a lot of apartments close by, so you won't necessarily need all that. But if somebody wants to have, two roommates, or one other roommate, so it's just two of you, then you can budget about $600 a month. And then if you choose to go higher than that and have more, some people choose to have like 4 roommates or 3 in addition to themselves, so 4 people living in one place, and then theirs is about $250, $300 per person.
Very good. So it depends really on your living situation, but a student that is going to be kind of getting an apartment for themselves, budgeting about $1,500 a month would probably be a good safe estimate, right, Ustad Fatima? And if someone's going to have a roommate situation, then that will come down accordingly from there. But cost of living is a little bit cheaper in Texas, and then where the seminary is located specifically within Arlington, so the cost of living even in the Dallas area is a little bit more affordable in the Arlington area, so that usually works out pretty well for the students. So we've already gone a little bit over time here in the first part of the program, so we're going to go ahead and inshallah transition to the second part of the program. And by the way, if anyone has any further kind of curiosities, you can go to the Qalam podcast and the Qalam YouTube channel. But you can go to the Qalam podcast, and there's not one, but there are 2 podcast sessions that were conducted by Ustad Ubaidullah, Ustad Atifa, and myself, where we talked extensively. Each podcast was over an hour long, and we talk in a lot more detail about what it means to study at the Qalam Seminary, and we answer a lot of these questions. So please do go listen to that, and inshallah we'll post the links on Facebook and YouTube as well, so that you're able to, inshallah, find those podcast sessions. So with that, I wanted to transition to the next part of our program here, inshallah, as part of our open house. The next part of our program, inshallah, is going to be a panel. And this is going to be about the student experience at Qalam. What is the student's experience at Qalam, particularly in the classroom, but just in general, what is the student experience in studying at Qalam? So we have a bunch of, alhamdulillah, our current and even former students, graduates who are going to be joining us for this session, inshallah. The main person who's inshallah going to be moderating and running this next segment of our program is a good friend and mashallah, someone who's been involved with Qalam from the very beginning of Qalam, and also from day one of the seminary as well. Brother Umar Usman, mashallah, he's here with us. And so Umar is going to, inshallah, be conducting this part of the program, and it's going to be split up into a couple of different, few different panels. And Umar, inshallah, will explain that to y'all as we go along. So I'll hand it off to Brother Umar Usman, and inshallah, he'll take it forward from here. Jazakumullah khair.
All right, Jazakallah khair. So in this segment, we'll be talking a little bit about the student experience in the classroom. So we'll be starting with a couple of our year 1 students, Sharif and Sana. And there we go. Got everyone online. So I'll open it up to you both. Sana, if you can go first with just a general question, and that is, what got you interested in studying, and how did you make the decision to apply to the Qalam Seminary?
Yeah, so living in a world, I feel like, where it's constantly going, and as a teenager, between academics, extracurricular activities, and whatnot, I felt that for me there was a big void of spirituality in myself. And not just spirituality, but even how to interact with people in the most prophetic way possible, how to conduct myself, how to continuously keep up my ibadat, especially my salah. And in the midst of me going to different talks and listening to different lectures, I saw a flyer for Sheikh Mikhail's Wednesday Halaqa. And this was way back in 2016, so around when it had very first started. Sheikh Mikhail's way of perfectly translating the text and that he reads in the halaqas, and his eloquence and his passion for the different topics drew me and so many other people to the gathering. I looked forward to every Wednesday, that 45 minutes to an hour of just serenity and deep reflection always gave me a sort of reboot for the week to come. I met so many amazing people there, a lot of them being students at the seminary. I saw in them, such tenacity and dedication that really inspired me. And that feeling of learning something beneficial and the takeaway of trying to implement it every week. And that was a really unbelievable feeling for me. And I just wanted to continue to do it more. And as the years progressed, every book that we read in the halaqa, every student I met continued to reaffirm to me that this was definitely something that I wanted to study and invest myself in. And with the support of a lot of people, I applied to the seminary, and I still sit in awe every day, not even believing that I have been given this honor to be amongst all these esteemed scholars and students. Alhamdulillah.
All right, Jazakallah khair. And Sharif, what about yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For me, just kind of echoing a little bit off what Sister Sana said, that definitely was looking for an opportunity to increase my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I really wanted to start that journey with Arabic and trying to better understand the Quran and what is being taught to us in the Quran Hadith, obviously. And for me, Qalam was almost a no-brainer. I benefited from all the shuyukh and all the ustads and ustadas through the podcast and the weekend seminars. And I'm just very humbled by the way they approach the subject matter. And obviously it's in America, so it's a little bit more convenient for me in that regard. So for me, that was part of my decision-making matrix as far as deciding to enroll in Qalam.
So for both of you, what were your expectations coming into it? What were you hoping to accomplish? You talked about your motivations, but when you apply and you make that sacrifice that I'm going to put my life on pause, I'm going to come dedicate my time, study here for a long period of time. What are you hoping to get out of it exactly?
The first answer, which I think usually is a common one for an Arabic student, is to really develop the understanding of the Quran, to be able to read and listen to passages and follow along with the meaning. The ability to read the Arabic and have even just a basic understanding is really unlike reading an English translation. I would say the second reason is to unlock more knowledge, to be able to access different subjects like reading and translating different texts, to even have the slightest ability to pick up a text that has no vowel markings on the letters and be able to follow along and see the different verb and noun patterns. Of course, I would say the most important of all would be the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love and appreciation for our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I pray that Allah blesses and preserves every student that dedicates even that smallest amount of time primarily for the sake of Allah and for learning the deen.
And Sharif, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, mashallah, she kind of hit the nail on the head there. Again, to kind of add on to it as well. Definitely, like I mentioned before, to increase my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I guess maybe from a little bit more of a tangible point of view, when I was doing the research for the Arabic program and looking on the Qalam website, it was very clear as far as what is the objective and the goal and what we would be equipped with after the first year. And alhamdulillah, that was very beneficial for me. So mashallah, for whoever put that information on the website, because it really helped manage my expectations. Sometimes, I could get a little bit too excited and wanting to finish a year and be like a master Arabic linguist, but that's not the case. And it's a long journey. It's a marathon, not it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And alhamdulillah, that managed my expectations as far as the skill sets that I was going to acquire and was taught in the first year. So that worked out for me very well, inshallah.
So, alhamdulillah, those are great goals, and like we said, it is a sacrifice, and as I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. What are some of the challenges that you encountered? Because I think one thing for a lot of students is they probably share a lot of the same ideas and the same goals, in the sense that I want to take time out, I want to learn, I want to understand the Quran, all of those things. But at the same time, making that commitment, what are the things that I need to be aware of that I'm not aware of? Like some of the challenges that you've encountered in this journey so far. Sharif, you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I think for me, my challenges might be a little bit unique because I kept working full time. So the three major challenges that kind of come to my mind right now, I guess the first being honestly just fatigue, right? Like Sheikh Jungda mentioned earlier, you're in class Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's homework, there's vocabulary, there's review, and then there's the job, right? This is your full-time job that you're doing, and it can get a little overwhelming sometimes and draining and tiring. So definitely kind of dealing with the fatigue and developing the muscle memory and getting through that. Second challenge would be, I guess, logistics, and that's somewhat related to the fatigue of really discovering and finding that sweet spot in your schedule and in your habits so that you can balance out and allocate appropriately towards school and towards your job. And thirdly, if I'm being just transparent and honest, is just guilt a little bit. Especially in the beginning, you feel a little guilty not being able to put as much time as you would like into your studies because, you got your job. And especially when the work takes me away from the class or out of the class for meetings or something like that. But, alhamdulillah, for the shuyukh and the instructors around and strong support system, you're able to kind of get through that and just, chip away and stay on the journey. So those are the three challenges that kind of come to my mind in my scenario.
I know a lot of people that are considering Qalam, they are working full time. Mm-hmm. And particularly now with the COVID-19 crisis, a lot more people are working remotely than they were before. Can you maybe elaborate for working professionals, not necessarily what type of work, but what does your workday look like in the sense of how you mix them together? Are you sitting in the back of the classroom coding and listening to the teachers? Are you stepping out to take meetings? Or are you in class and then working all night? How does that actually look like in practice?
Sure, absolutely. Well, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with the flexibility in my career and my job that allows me to kind of log in throughout the day and fulfill my biweekly requirements in a very flexible manner. So for me, I would log on and try to get some things done before class, typically like maybe after Fajr or like an hour or two before class, log in, do some things, go to class. If I would do my best to reschedule meetings if they were during class, but every now and then I would have to step out, obviously with notifying the instructors and the shuyukh. And then after class, there's homework and the night, finish up the day's tasks. And obviously we have the weekends to kind of catch up on work as well. So yeah, that's basically how it wound up working out for me.
Okay. And Sana, what about you? What challenges have you encountered?
So I completely agree with everything Brother Sharif mentioned, and classical Arabic was just very challenging. And in my opinion, in order for a student to comprehend a vast majority of its rules, it requires from the student a lot of patience and dedication. And for me, motivation was always a key struggle. Sometimes even just frustration with not understanding a concept or feeling disappointed over a mistake you made on an exam. But subhanAllah, that's the beauty of it. Anytime Ustad Ubaidullah gave us a reminder, every time Mufti Kamani gave us a motivational talk, anytime we had a guest speaker, they always spoke about their challenges, and it was always something that we related to. When you really want something, you push yourself hard to work for it, and Arabic comes with its challenges, and you'll have your moments, but you always end up pushing through. And Ustad Ubaidullah is super helpful and was always willing to set up extra meetings with students to go over different plans on how to approach the concepts. And your classmates are always a really good support system because they are often more than not going through the same thing that you are.
All right, Jazakallah khair. One, you mentioned support system. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? What, in this type of a journey, if you're moving from another city to come here, you lose some of your traditional support system in the sense of friends that you may meet with regularly or your family members. How did you maybe deal with that, and what other types of support did you look for and find at Qalam?
Absolutely. So our teachers and staff always work tirelessly to offer support to all of us, and the teachers were always available after classes to answer questions. And we had our awesome teacher assistant, Ustad Jonah, who always had study and review sessions, and all the senior students. We actually, each of us had a mentor from the Anemia program, and that really helped me. I always had someone to reach out to that had gone through a similar process and that I could relate to. And of course, all of the sohbah and programs that are always going on for all the students definitely provides a good support system.
Okay. All right. And then last question, we can close it out. So we'll go ahead and start with you. But for people that are considering this program, what would you recommend it? What would you advise them? Just kind of what's your general statement for them if they're debating attending this or not?
Yeah, I would absolutely, with no hesitation, recommend this program to others. Speaking for myself, I feel as though this year has really changed and shaped me into trying my best to become a better person. It has given me more confidence and equipped me with tools that can help me better serve my community. And will, inshallah, continue to open up various different opportunities. It has made me a better, more dedicated student, which will serve as a benefit for later when I do go back to secular studies. And as a younger person, I would recommend this program to any other younger student, high school student, or a college student. This program will not just benefit you, but it will also benefit those around you, your family, your friends, the people that you work with. Whether you're a student or you work a 9-to-5 job, or are involved in the community as a volunteer or a leader, this program will shape and give you the tools to help you better serve everyone around you to the best of your ability.
Can I ask you to elaborate on one thing that you just mentioned there in passing, which was how do you see a program like this benefiting someone in their secular studies? Because I think that's something that maybe people don't think about, that relationship.
Yeah, just in terms of interacting with other people, studying with Sheikh Abdul Nasser, we go over the shama'il of the Prophet, the prophetic characteristics, and just to watch how he dealt with the people around him, how dedicated he was, his way of, interacting with other people. It really shapes a person and gives them really good defining characteristics, good leadership qualities to continue in whatever path that they do choose to undertake.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. And Sharif, same question.
Yeah, if you're interested, or if anyone's interested in coming to this program, whether you're fresh out of school or you're working full time, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you like he's blessed me with that type of flexibility and that opportunity, I would 100% recommend you to do this. It definitely has its challenges, but it's well worth it. You won't regret a minute of it. Learning the Arabic language and beginning to understand the Quran, it's been priceless for me. The overall experience at Qalam and this year has evolved and strengthened my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that I can't really put into words. And if you want to learn Arabic and you can come and learn Arabic, definitely do so. It will be one of the most rewarding and best things you can ever do in your life. And honestly, I cannot recommend it highly enough.
All right, great. Jazakallah khair, guys, for joining. And we'll now hear from some of our Year 2 students. All right, so we've got Sally and Bilal with us. Jazakallah khair, guys, for joining. So we'll maybe go through some of the same questions that we went with the Year 1 students. And Sally, I guess I'll start with you. What got you interested in studying, and how did you make the decision to apply?
Well, Alhamdulillah, for me, it was a bit easier because I had the support of my community. So MAPS in Seattle, they were giving out scholarships for one boy and one girl in our community. So alhamdulillah, it made it a lot easier to say yes, I guess, because a lot of times I think what I struggled with the most is one, finding a good program that has like good shuyukh that are able to teach the classical texts and then contextualize it. And then number two is having the support I need from family, friends, and community on top of that. And three is having the funds. So for me, all three, alhamdulillah, aligned, and Qalam was a perfect place to start. And with the community support, alhamdulillah, it just made it a lot easier to get into it.
All right, and Bilal?
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, I was able to study Arabic with Ustad Ubaidullah, among other instructors. And so he was kind of one of the first links I had to Qalam in terms of I studied from him. I knew the way he taught. And then obviously going to classes and listening to the podcast, et cetera, with all the shuyukh, Sheikh Abdul Nasir, Mufti Kamani, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had that experience with the Qalam instructors. And I always knew that I wanted to do some kind of take a year off or take half a year as much as I could to study Islamic studies. And alhamdulillah, the opportunity presented itself. I was able to kind of take some time from university, wrap it up a little earlier, or take some time off. And I had that slot available. And I've always been passionate about Islamic studies. And so alhamdulillah, the opportunity just presented itself to me, and I was able to take advantage of it, and I was able to attend Qalam. And alhamdulillah, like Sally mentioned, our instructors are fantastic at being able to teach that traditional text, all their traditional curriculum, at the same time really helping us practically apply it and understand it in our modern 21st century. So for all those reasons, I was really attracted to Qalam, and alhamdulillah, I was able to attend.
So you both mentioned, Sal, you mentioned contextualizing, and Bilal, you just mentioned, what you just said. Can you guys elaborate a little bit on what that means when you say contextualizing the traditional Islamic studies or making it relevant to, our situation? What does that actually look like? What does that actually mean? Because I think for a lot of people, when they hear traditional Islamic studies, there is a tendency to think that this is the same stuff recycled over and over again, or it's maybe cliche, or maybe it's not practical for our lived reality. What's the difference there when you talk about it being more practical or contextualized?
So I think for me so I studied a little bit of Islamic studies when I used to live in Egypt. So it was really hard for me to, when I came back, to be able to teach any of that, because I learned it all pure Arabic, and it was it was also Shafi'i. So it was just I couldn't relate it here to the community, which was more diverse. And so coming here with Qalam, I was able to learn the same classical Arabic texts, but it was translated in a sense that if I were to talk to someone else from my community, or talk to a friend or family or anything like that, it was easier to find the words to be able to translate it in terms that they would understand. Another thing was also contextualizing it in the modern era where it's usable. So a lot of times, in fiqh books or other books, you understand the greater concepts, but being able to relay that in today's community, in today's time, is really hard if you don't have the mentorship or if you don't have the education for it. So alhamdulillah, with Qalam, I was able to learn from them, okay, so this is the text that we're learning in fiqh, for example, and then this is how you would use it today, or this is how you would relay it today. So alhamdulillah, with that contextualization, it really helped relay it, or give me the tools and resources to relay it.
Bilal, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Sally said a lot of what I wanted to say, but just adding a little bit onto that, I think a lot of times the instructors, even in sciences or disciplines where you might think, like Sira or something like that, where maybe there's not how do you implement that, but they make really practical connections. A lot of the stories we hear about in Sira, they connect it to our modern day life and how the Sahaba interacted with the Prophet ﷺ, or the way the Prophet ﷺ conducted himself, how we really can transfer that from the Sirah to our modern days. So a lot of the connections the instructors make from the text to real life are really valuable.
So it sounds like you each had some, Islamic studies background coming in. What were your specific expectations coming into Qalam? What were you hoping to get out of it and accomplish? Sally, we can start with you.
So my expectation was getting a lot of like a wholesome overview of Islamic studies. Because when I learned it before, it was just like a class amongst other classes in a normal school. So it was like science, math, Islamic studies, and then like gym or whatever. But here it's a full-time program where you're learning all the different sciences at once. And so having that focus is very unique, and it's very nice to be able to have it all at the same time and seeing how it connects. So I remember like in the beginning of the year, like we would have like hadith class and then tafsir class and then for example like aqidah, and we would see how everything would connect because it's all like Islam. So you'd see like, oh, like we heard this in tafsir and now it's connecting back to hadith, and like everything was just intrinsic and it was really beautiful. So
all right, and Bilal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I didn't have as much of a Islamic studies background necessarily. I obviously had, heard of Sira and some podcasts, et cetera, but I wanted to gain more of a advanced understanding. Not to say that this is the, end all be all, obviously not. This is year 2 of a 5-year program. But just to get my feet wet in the traditional studies. So you're able to get a mix of, some of the more scholarly stuff. So like whether it's ulum or usul, et cetera, and some of the more practical stuff as well, whether it's fiqh or even, tazkiyah, et cetera. So a lot of those studies, like Sally mentioned, there's so much connection in them. Like you'll read a page of tafsir and then there'll be like 4 hadith or something like that, and then there'll be like a fiqh concept related to it. And so there's all these things that are all tied together. And so rather than studying those separately, having them all together in this program really helps you understand and identify those connections. And I think that's one of the really valuable things about the seminary.
Alhamdulillah. So with those though, there's always challenges when it comes to making the sacrifice of time, the commitment, family, work, school, all of those things. Sally, what kind of challenges did you face, or that you would want other students maybe to be aware of as they're considering applying to Qalam?
So for me, I had to move everything, right? So I had to move that, and I was also just married, so I also had to do long term for a year. So that was a challenge for me, just trying to balance everything from here and at home. But honestly, the support that was given here made up for it, because at any time of the day I needed help, people would be at my door. They'd be like, I felt like you needed help, and they would like come to your like rescue. So that was also that was great, alhamdulillah, like the suhbah that came with Qalam, so that you would always get the help you need and that you would never feel like you were in this journey alone.
And Bilal?
Yeah, so for me, alhamdulillah, I was able to study Qalam alongside my university studies. I was wrapping up my last year of undergraduate. And so in that first semester, so from around August to December roughly, I was going to university, Monday through Thursday. And I was able to attend Qalam on site on Sundays, and I would also show up after period 3 or so on Thursdays. And so obviously a big challenge is just balancing, university as well as Qalam. I knew I wanted to do both. And so I was dedicated, and I had to use a lot of discipline. But I think, like Sally mentioned, a lot of the support that Qalam provides is so useful, because, there's so much to study, especially when I'm coming home and there's so much recording. Sometimes it could be a little overwhelming. But just in terms of the students, my peers, shout out to Sally as well. They make some amazing notes, a lot of great reviews. The instructors themselves are extremely accessible, whether that's through email or just going after class. And the TAs as well will help you where you're at. So I had a little bit of challenges early on, for sure, just trying to balance my university as well as Qalam. But I think the instructors and my fellow students really helped me succeed.
Was this your last semester of university that overlapped with Qalam?
So this was my last semester that I just finished in spring, but the fall semester, which I was going hybrid on site and online at Qalam, I was doing 9 hours on campus. And so I had to be there at 4 days a week or whatever. And so that took a lot of my time away. And even though it was 9 hours, it was kind of like harder classes. But I was still able to, again, balance that stuff. And then so the spring semester now, I was doing all online classes at university. So it was much easier to balance that, being on campus full time and then kind of, taking care of my classes whenever I have the chance. And so alhamdulillah, again, I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and alhamdulillah has made it easy for me to be able to achieve both things.
And Sally, you mentioned that you had you're a newlywed attending and maintaining, I guess you said, a long distance relationship in the beginning. A lot of people, there's never like a perfect time to put your life on pause and go study, right? Everyone's going to have unique challenges and situations. You had a unique family situation. What would your advice be to other people that are juggling between, a family situation or family dynamic and wanting to go and study?
Honestly, like you said, there's no perfect time to put your life on pause, but alhamdulillah, it was, we had talked about it and I really, really wanted to learn the deen. And so we discussed how it would be an investment for like us and for the community. So we decided like it would be perfect to just do it now while we have the like opportunity and the funds for it. So you just communicate through it, video chats, and you get through it, alhamdulillah. And with the Qalam support, it makes it so much better because, again, like you're not alone through it. And there are other people that were doing long distance as well. So it was really nice to be able to relate with them.
Alhamdulillah. So for people that are considering coming to Qalam, what would your recommendation and advice be for them? Bilal, we can start with you.
Yeah, mine would be 100%. Definitely consider applying. Definitely do apply. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of effort you have to put in, but like any good thing, that's going to be expected. For people who are really passionate about Islamic sciences, or even just want to gain that base foundation. So even if they plan to leave after year 2, they have that foundation going forward where they can, confidently, maybe not, derive or do complex fiqh rulings, but they can at least follow these more advanced discussions. They can really benefit from those. And then also just acting as a leader to the community too. With the knowledge we've gained, I really think that there's a lot of things we can take back to the community and help them with. And so just in short, yes, absolutely, I would recommend everybody who's interested in Islamic studies, whether it's as a all the way to the 5-year program for the Alamiya program, or just, dipping in for the year 2, gaining that foundation, I'd highly recommend it.
All right, Jazakallah khair. And Sally?
Same. It's an investment for sure, but it's so worth it because you can always apply it. Like it's not one of those studies where it's like, oh, if you'll forget it if you don't use it, because you're constantly using it. Like this is a way of life, and this is how you're living, and being able to live at like the best that you can Islamically. So here at Qalam, like not only are we getting like the like fiqh and aqeedah and all that, but we were also getting like the spiritual knowledge. So being able to like have that mentorship from our teachers, where if we were feeling unmotivated or something, they would always like chime in with like advice and how to demotivate yourselves and how to de-stress and stuff, and that you weren't alone, and that this is what the Prophet went through, and this is, this is how he mediated that, or how this helped him. And so having that really helps you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Jazakallah khair, Sally and Bilal, for joining us. And I think now we're going to shift over to the Alamiya group of students. We'll give it just a second here. All right, so we've got Samrina, Rabia, and Muhammad Herbert with us from the Qalam Alamiya program. So these are the students that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in various stages of the 5-year program. So through years 3, 4, and 5 of the seminary.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but my screen just lagged. I'm going to have to log out and come right back.
Okay, we can hear you, but we can't see.
I can't see anything. Everything's black. Sorry.
No problem. All right, so we'll start with, Samrina and Rabi, you've both been here now for a few years. And Samrina, we'll start with you. What got you initially interested in studying at Qalam, and how did you make the decision both not only to attend but then continue on long term?
So originally, my passion was to learn Arabic and to understand the meaning of the Quran. And when I actually moved with my husband and my one year old to Dallas, and we studied Arabic. And then after I had Arabic, I had all these questions about what does the Quran say, especially when it came to like controversial women issues that I didn't feel like I was satisfied hearing, or I came from a very secular background, so I had all these stereotypes in my head. And Ustada Atifa, she actually really encouraged me to apply to Qalam. So I actually applied to Qalam with all these questions in my mind because I wanted to learn about just those certain issues that I had, and I wanted to build a stronger relationship with the Quran.
Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that? Because that's not, when someone says that they come from a secular background, their first inclination is not to go to a traditional Islamic seminary. How did you, what was that thought process like?
So it was a little bit, a couple years in the making. Originally, I had no idea what it meant to learn Arabic. I just kind of wanted to connect to the language the Quran was revealed in. I don't even think I fully understood what it meant to be able to understand the Quran. I didn't have that understanding. I didn't grow up with any Islam, really no Islamic background. So when me and my husband got married, we wanted to leave the country and go overseas to learn Arabic. So that was like our first step. We chose a bad year, the year of the protests in Egypt, but we came back to Dallas and we learned Arabic. And after learning Arabic, you're just more curious about Islamic knowledge. So I got all the books that you could in English off of Amazon and other places, but you realize the books in English are kind of basic level. And after a while you want more and you're searching for more and you can't get answered. So I enlisted in like al-Maghrib courses, but they're sometimes offered sporadically and the shuyukh are great, but you want more. And so for me, Qalam was like, at this point, it was just the year 2 that was being offered. So I enrolled in that year wanting to just get like a basic understanding and build my relationship further with Quran. And to be honest with you, after I enrolled in Qalam and started going through the year, my mind actually exploded with the amount of knowledge that you can have and like the different disciplines and fields and hadith and tafsir and all that came with it. It was something for me I learned as I went and what was offered.
All right, Jazakallah khair. And Rabia?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think I kind of started Qalam with actually I started the journey towards Islamic studies as somebody who just had a very superficial understanding of Islam and kind of just getting very tired of that. I didn't really start practicing Islam until around 17 or 18. And so everything was very new for me. And so I was just getting the basics of this, basics of the Quran, basics of Arabic, basics of Hadith. And throughout college, I had this passion to serve. And so started getting involved in the MSA and community work. But I realized very quickly that everything I had was very superficial. My understanding was so superficial that I didn't have much to offer. And so, just like a tank of gas that's kind of gradually getting lower and lower and lower, I realized as a couple of years passed that there was so much to do, but I had nothing to give. When I would be asked a question, at the university by an atheist, or at the masjid by a young Sunday school student, I didn't know what more to say, and I think I got very frustrated by that, and not knowing my religion properly and its depth, because I knew there was depth, I just didn't have that. I just had a superficial understanding of everything. And so I remember one year, it was actually the first year that Qalam Seminary opened, where Imam Herbert was part of the first class. They came and they did a visit to San Antonio. That's where I was at the time. And it was almost as if the solution to the problem that I'd been facing for years just handed to us on a silver platter. And I remember, being so inspired by them at the time and realizing that this is the solution. This is where I need to go to fix that problem of just being a superficial person in my understanding of Islam and my connection with Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. And so I just realized after speaking to many of those first year students from that first year class that I had to study Arabic, and I didn't know a lick of Arabic grammar. And so I actually enrolled in an Arabic program in order to get to Qalam. So did 9 months of that, but even then it was a big struggle for me. Nahu was a huge battle. Sarf was another challenge, and so it was just I didn't know if I would be able to even get through Qalam, and I also had to take a gap year. So it was a rough journey, but alhamdulillah, just finally making it there, having a dua answered, of sitting in the classroom with Sheikh Abdul Nasser in that initial seminary year was so incredible. And like Ustaz Samina was saying, it almost shifted my entire worldview of Islam. It's as if I had approached Islam in a very black and white way. And after going to that seminary year, I realized just how complex and just how much nuance there was in our religion. And it was much more than a simple, ruling here and there. There was a framework with which everything worked. And I think that has been one of the most transformational things, like unwiring and rewiring my brain and its understanding of Islam.
All right, and Mohammed, on to you. So I think you dropped off when I asked the question, but the question was, what made you interested in studying, and how did you make the decision to not just apply and attend Qalam, but then stick with it, long term for a few years?
Yeah, so for me, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. For me, my journey is pretty interesting. It's very unique in the sense that, as Sister Rabia mentioned, we were from the first batch. And for me, I can tell you one thing for sure. This was not the intention by any stretch of the imagination. It's very unique. It's very unique because I hear these amazing, inspiring stories by Sister Samrina, Sister Rabia, and we had the other students that were here before, and how they struggled and they put everything on pause and they kind of came about. For me personally, it's very unique. I had no intention of being an imam or of studying deen or anything like that. For me, it was the connection with our teachers. I remember my mom coming to me when I was younger, and she asked me one time, she says, you memorize Quran, but you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't understand it, even a lick of it, right? And Sister Samrina, mashallah, she knows my mom. She knows how much of an OG she is, mashallah, tabarakallah. My mom don't play, right? And at that time in my life, I really had absolutely no interest in studying deen. Like it wasn't on my radar, And I came to study Arabic simply to make her happy, and that was it. That was it. That was literally it, just to make my mom happy. And I continued studying and studying and studying. And after my year of studying Arabic, I fell in love with the Quran. I saw a depth in this book that I've never seen in anything else. It was literally miraculous. I wanted to say remarkable. There's so many different adjectives that we can use, but it's literally just miraculous. And you kept studying and studying and studying, and there was just more to learn. And your iman and your connection with your creator just begins to grow and blossom, and you connect in such a way it's impossible to put into words, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created us with that little hole inside of our hearts, right? Where we yearn to learn him, to learn about him. We yearn to get close to him, Azza wa Jal. And I felt that little hole starting to be filled a little bit. You start to feel a little bit of a purpose in life. And I remember Sheikh Abdul Nasser, we would play basketball with Sheikh Abdul Nasser Tuesday nights after Sirah class. And I remember one time Sheikh Abdul Nasser came up to me and he was like, what do you think about studying, full time? I was like, I got nothing better to do. Let's do it. Bismillah, right? At that point, I was just in the height of it, And alhamdulillah, applied, got accepted. Alhamdulillah, don't know how. I still don't know how I did it, how I went through it. It's one of those things where it's just like, one thing after another, after another. And for me personally, we never claim, sincerity or piety for ourselves. It's something that we're consistently aspiring to gain and to grow in. But one thing that I can say, at least about my first year, my other years, Allah Ta'ala alam bisawab, at least about my first year, that when you approach this deen kind of sincerely, those doors just begin to open. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just kind of opens doors in ways that you wouldn't even fathom, right? And then once you're kind of in the in the family, playing ball with Sheikh A&J, listening to the Sirah classes, studying usul al-fiqh and tafsir and Sirah. Alhamdulillah, soon after that, I got a position as the Imam at the Mansfield Islamic Center. And again, one thing kind of just led to another. And it was just this love, this compassion that you had that just kept growing and growing and growing. And you fulfill, this deep desire that you have of just needing purpose, right? Allah Ta'ala. So for me, that's kind of what kind of brought me into this field. And,
So it's kind of interesting that each of you came in maybe for different reasons or with even different sets of expectations. How did your experience align with the expectations that you had? I guess, Samrina, we can start with you.
Okay, so my expectations were, I didn't have many expectations, to be honest with you. I came from a secular education, so that's like the kind of education that I was used to seeing. And the Islamic education, maybe once in a while, like if I went to like a halaqah, or the only formal education I had was maybe in Arabic. So when I came to actually like enroll in Qalam, the first month that we do like the 40 hadith of Nawawi. That's what we did in my first year. I was actually in the back, and I would have to actually control like that ugly cry that you do when you just want to like let it all out. I had to control that, and then we would have Ustad Murphy come in and talk about Ghazali. And I remember going into Sheikh Abdul Nasser's office and saying, like, I don't actually think you tell people what Qalam is about. I was like, I don't think people know like what's going on here. And I was so moved by just the way that Sheikh would teach the class and just the subjects that we learned. So my expectations for myself, like what I expected of the program and what I got out of it, like what the end results far exceeded my expectations. I just came into kind of getting a basic knowledge, maybe delving more into, I was very like gung-ho, like I'm going to bring Quran to the women. That was like my mindset coming into Quran. But you learn so much more. You learn like this idealistic nature that you have about Quran, and you learn how to like apply it practically. And just like Brother Muhammad said, that one of the best things at Qalam for me was actually the experience that you have being taught by the Shaykh. Like being taught by like Sheikh Abdul Nasser, like it actually, like, I don't know what it does to you, but it calms you down as a person. Like when I'm like very fiery, so I'm like go go go, and then like you hear him speak and you fall in love with the Sira. Like that was something that I didn't expect. Like I fell in love with the Sira. You get Sira, you get Mustalah. Like I was like the few nerds that loved usul too. I thought it was like eating like a gigantic cupcake. Like usul was amazing. And these were things that I didn't know existed about the religion. And the one expectation that I do think for me that like even, or just understanding of religion that I felt like really changed for me was that I feel like for the masses that don't have Islamic background, you don't think that Islam is a scholarly religion. And that was something that I learned at Qalam, that it is, if you want to say anything is scholar, like Islam is a scholarly religion, like how the hadith were compiled, how they're narrated, the grading, like the actual like critiques of the scholars that are graded for hadith. Like for me, my mind was blown in the preservation and all of that just to understand the Book of Allah. So subhanAllah, like my mind was actually blown just after my first year. So that was a little bit about my expectations.
And Rabia?
In terms of expectations, I think there was one major expectation I had about Qalam and the Alamiya program, and it was that I would have to basically put my life on hold for 5 years when joining this. And that's the kind of type of person I am. Whenever I kind of dive into something, I feel like I have to put everything else on hold when I do it. And so I remember, I feel like because I had that expectation, that's the one test that I faced every single year, is that I was not able to give up life for Qalam. I remember my seminary year, the first couple of months I didn't have to work or anything, alhamdulillah. But then, around November and December, I was working an overnight job just to kind of get through. And it was really tough, but it was like a reminder that doing this and being on this journey, I wasn't going to be able to put everything else on hold in order to get through it. And I felt like that would impede my education and progress somehow. I felt like that would impede my relationship with my teachers. I felt like that would impede my ability to stay in that program. And there were so many times where, getting off of work and then staying up all night and going to class the next day, where I felt like I just can't get through the day. You know, I won't be able to make it in time to submit these assignments. I won't be able to get through this test because I haven't prepared enough. And even now, up until year 4, having to constantly juggle, you know, jobs on the side. All of my classmates, almost all of them, juggle work on the side and family responsibilities. One of the biggest things I realized was that expectation wasn't there. There was this understanding that going through not just a seminary program and now into Alamiya, life would have to continue with us. And just the amount of support that we've received in order to accomplish that, in order to juggle everything else on the side, I think it's just blown me away. I think there have been at least in a span of a year, there's almost 3 or 4 times where I go to different instructors and tell them that I need to quit. You know, maybe it'll be Ustad Suhaib, or it'll be Sheikh Abdul Nasser, or it'll be Mufti Kamani or Mufti Muntasir, because, you know, just not knowing how to do all of it. But the support that you receive, almost like this fatherly understanding, you know, this tarbiyah that's done, not only just in regards to studies and how to manage them, but in terms of how to juggle the personal struggles too. It's been the most profound blessing. And I don't think I would have been able to juggle everything if it hadn't been for that understanding and that compassion and that mercy to be able to do it all.
And Muhammad?
For me personally, I come into Qalam not knowing anything about like Islamic studies at all. Like, when I tell you nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. I come into Qalam literally not knowing what a Khalifa is, right? Not knowing who like Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. And I know there's probably some youngins watching here and laughing at me. I mean, that was my reality, you know. When I tell you I know...
I think you should mention that you were young and that wasn't even old enough to drive.
I was old enough to drive, barely, by like 1 or 2 years. But, you know, subhanAllah, like I knew absolutely nothing about Islam. And so the idea of having expectations for me, like, I mean, what can you expect of something that's unknown? You know, there's nothing to expect. But one thing that I can definitely speak about my experience is how, as we learned, those expectations evolved and grew, right? And so I come into Arabic, again, not knowing a lick of anything. Like, literally, alhamdulillah, I memorized the Quran, but it was on the tongue. That's it, you know? And, you know, you have you have no expectation. You just kind of come in. I'm here. I'm doing a year, just doing my time, and then I'm out. I'm back to college. I'm back to, you know, doing whatever it is that I was doing. And then, you know, you connect with the Quran. And it's like, okay, wow, now I want to learn more about the Quran. And then that expectation is surpassed, right? Because everything you thought you could learn, there was so much more to learn, right? And then you start seminary, right? And then the seminary year, you have this expectation. It's like, okay, I guess I'm going to study Islamic studies. I don't know what that means. I guess I'll learn more Quran, I guess. I mean, I get this Quran and Sunnah, right? That's what all the scholars talk about. I mean, that's what we're going to do. And you go in, and it's like, no, there's so much more, you know? And Samina put it so beautifully, that, like, if there's anything that's a scholarly study, if you're one of those people like myself that's kind of like obsessed with the details and little things and very like detail focused, I'm one of those weird kids that growing up, my favorite show was like Sherlock Holmes, right? Like, it wasn't like Power Rangers. It was just like the idea of like this, the detail and paying attention to this and that and discovery and taking things apart. And so you kind of come in and again, I have no expectation because I don't know anything. And you're just blown away day after day after day. There's this and there's this and there's this. Then the Alamiya program starts. And you look at the syllabus for the program and you're like, okay, we're going to study, you know, some fiqh books through Hidayah. We're going to study Mishkat al-Masabih for Hadith. And we're going to be studying, Aqidah with Dr. Masood, right? But I know all of Rabia definitely remembers Aqidah with Dr. Masood, mashallah. It's definitely the most fun class of the whole entire curriculum. And so you go in and you're like, okay, I mean, I already studied Aqidah, I already studied Hadith, I already studied fiqh. This should be easy. You go in and it's just like, nope, not even a little bit. Everything you thought you knew, you're going to learn more, right? And all of it, and it's still coming from that same source. It's still coming from Quran and Sunnah. And then you go into Dora year, right? And Dora year is just, mainly focused on Hadith, right? And again, you have that expectation. You kind of come in, you're like, okay, I'm going to learn hadith. Like that's, I mean, what is it? It's just hadith, right? Like, I mean, everyone reads Bukhari, right? You go in and you're just like, nope, there's so much more to it than that. And so, you know, the expectations kind of evolved as I was there, as my life kind of evolved around it. And I can say confidently that every single day, those expectations were not just met, but they were surpassed. You know, again, especially for me personally, coming in as someone who knew nothing, right? And so for me personally, I didn't have like a, oh, I need to be like a mufti bank or whatever, you know, that like I didn't know these people existed, you know, literally not on my radar at all. And so to be just blown away day after day after day. And, you know, as I mentioned before, just that love and appreciation of the deen just growing and seeing truly when we call the Quran miraculous, what that actually means.
All right, Jazakallah khair. So as a final wrap-up question, and looking at it a little bit holistically in terms of having done this now for a few years, gone through various challenges, whether it's life situations, work, school, whatever the case may be, what's just maybe some advice, parting advice that you would have for people that are in different stages of life, but, you know, hearing all this, they want to study, they want to commit, and they're debating or considering, you know, should I make the sacrifice and come to Qalam? Sister Samina, we can start with you.
Okay, I'm always a wrong person to ask this question because my answer is always yes. I was a mother when I actually joined the first year, and my son was 3, and my second baby came during the actually the third year now. So when I joined Qalam, I was already a mom, and then I had a new baby on campus, subhanAllah. So it was actually a struggle being a mom to actually go through the entire like seminary of the entire 5 years. So I would say like I had to struggle with the fantasy of not being married, of not having kids, of being single and being in my teens and studying Islam, and where I was with my kids, the latter one who was like a little dinosaur, and she was crazy, and she was on campus all the time, and just really accepting that Allah has perfected my life and crafted it perfectly for me to be here at this time, and to accept that as my challenge. So I would say like it was definitely a struggle, but alhamdulillah, like the teachers are astounding, and I'm actually like humbled and so grateful with the honor and grace that they accepted my children on campus. My daughter used to share her little daycare with Mufti Kamani's library. Muhammad Herbert was actually my classmate the whole time during our seminary program, so he knows what she was like. And like subhanAllah, I have so much love for my classmates because they did not care if she was screaming in the back or like I had to take her in or whatever it was. And I'm actually like moved to tears when I think about that, because it was like, as a mother, whenever you hear your child cry and someone's talking, you're always like, oh my God, they're like so loud. Like it's like a constant nervous anxiety that you have. But my classmates were honestly like the best people, and like the teachers were so amazing in their acceptance. So if you're in any stage of your life, like if you're a mother or if you just got married, like just take the first step. There's so many options of going part-time. There's so many options of doing full-time. Now there's so many options of, you know, doing doing distance learning. So take the leap, and inshallah do even a little bit. I would say just say Sheikh's favorite word, like inshallah, which should be all of our favorite words, but take the leap and do a little bit, inshallah. And inshallah, Allah will open doors for you.
All right, and Rabia?
I think my advice would be similar to Sister Samarina's, in that, you know, whatever obstacle, you know, any or stage of life that anybody's at right now, to not let it feel like it would be a hindrance to them starting this journey of sacred knowledge. And I think the main thing that I would highlight is to never underestimate the power of dua, and the power of the dua that can facilitate this journey for someone. I remember, you know, I had to take a gap year after studying Arabic, and during that gap year was very difficult because I didn't think I would ever be able to study at Qalam, and that was the whole reason why I studied Arabic anyways. And it was very difficult, but I remember meeting with Sheikh Abdul Nasser during one of my trips to Dallas, and there was almost you know, the main advice he gave me was that, you know, whatever challenges you're facing right now, whether it's financial or family or whatever it is, just don't let go of making dua for it, right? And there was almost like this certainty that he had. It was as if there was no doubt in his mind that it would happen, right? And I remember being so inspired that moment that, okay, that even if I feel like I'll never be able to, you know, be be like my teachers and or be given the opportunity to study, that the least I can do is just keep making sincere dua. And sure enough, 8 months later, I don't know how the pieces came together, but I found myself sitting in the classroom and just amazed, at the blessing and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just connecting all the dots and making it happen. So, whatever stage or whatever obstacle that anybody is facing that is coming in their way of seeking knowledge, just making a sincere dua, never giving up on it, that Allah can move around everything to make it possible, especially like Ustaz Samina said, there are so many different avenues to do it. There's part-time programs, there are ways to kind of spread out, even the seminary program, even the Alamiya program. I've never met instructors and staff who are so supportive, who are so eager to facilitate this knowledge for everybody, no matter where they're at. So, with dua and the support of all the instructors and staff, it's definitely something that can be a reality for any Muslim.
And Muhammad, you can close this out.
For me personally, the advice that I would give anyone that's looking to kind of walk down this path, that's eager to study and wants to learn, just remember one thing, and that is that when you choose to follow this path, there's two realities. The first reality is that there's a target on your back. This is an advice that actually my Hifz teacher told my mom when I was 7 years old, just starting Hifz school. And this is not something that I knew. This is something that my mom told me years later. My mom said that, for those of you guys that may be watching from Baltimore, from the East Coast, Qari Zahid from ISB, he told my mom, he says, understand that the second you go down this journey, there's a target on your back. Shaitan is not out there trying to find, the racist people and trying to, tell them like, hey, go do more bad things, right? Like they're already walking down a certain path, right? But the second you walk down this path, Shaitan will do everything in his power to try to tell you, oh, worry about your money, worry about your family, worry about this, worry about this, worry about every worry in the world will come up, and it will never be a good time. It won't be, right? That's just the reality. So this is the first reality to understand. But the second reality overpowers that. And that is, I remember sitting in class one time, and this was our first time meeting Mufti Kamani. And subhanAllah, till this day, literally, I get goosebumps thinking about it. But I remember Mufti Kamani coming in and speaking to us, and Mufti Sahab, he said, I'm humbled and I'm honored to sit in your presence. And I'm thinking to myself, who? Say what? What? Are you kidding me? Come on, guy, right? Please take a deep breath. What do you mean you're humbled to sit in my presence, right? I don't even know if I prayed Asr on time today, right? Please, right? Which, I did, alhamdulillah. But, just... but he said, as students of knowledge, you remember one thing, and one reality, and that is that you have now embarked on the journey in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طالب العلم في سبيل الله حتى يرجع. Right? That the student of knowledge is in the path of Allah until he comes back. And so, who do you think is going to have your back? When Shaitan is putting all of these waswasas inside of your head, Shaitan is telling you this and this and this and this and this. This is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. Don't forget that you are on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who do you think is going to get your back? Who's going to help you? Who's going to help you solve all of those problems? And each and every single one of us have our own unique challenges and difficulties and problems and struggles, right? But if Allah can't help you with that, who can? If Allah can't help you, give up, right? And wal-'iyadhu billah, that's obviously not a reality, right? Allah is capable of everything and anything. And, as Sister Rabia mentioned, you approach it with sincerity, you approach it with dua, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open doors in a way that you could not even imagine. I mean, I didn't even intend to be here. I'm an imam of a community, alhamdulillah. I didn't know who a Khalifa was 10 years ago. I didn't even know who Umar was 10 years ago. Not just Umar Usman, but all the other Umars as well, right? I had no idea, right? And now I'm sitting here and, subhanAllah, you're in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, as Rabia mentioned, make that dua. And as Sister Samina mentioned, take that first step. You take that first step and you sincerely just put yourself in it. You block out the haters, right? You just put yourself in it and you work hard. It's not going to be easy. You know, Serena, mashallah, was talking about being a full-time mom, right? There's no part-time mom job. A mother, right? And then going to classes every single day, never missing a class, right? Serena, again, an OG, original gangster right here, mashallah, tabarakallah, every single day being there. Rabia talking about her experiences of balancing work and family and school and this and that. Like, me myself balancing, you know, work and family and school. I can tell you for about 7 years, I worked maybe 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then on the seventh day, I had half a day off because I still had school on that day, right? And so it's not easy, right? But when you're in it and you have that connection and you have that love and you keep working and working, Allah opens doors in ways that you can't even imagine. And I swear by Allah, if I could go back and do it again, I'd do it again. Just to sit in that class, just to struggle and cry in front of the usul books, right? Not understanding Husami at all, right? Just to sit there and sit in Aqidah class and listen to Dr. Mas'ud teach us, right? Just to sit, you know, with Mufti Kamani at his feet, teaching us hadith, right? Just to sit with Mufti Muntasir teaching us this deep science of how hadith is compiled and history and this and that. Or to listen to Sheikh Abdul Nasser go on another rant, you know, either, no, that's just a jab, you know, our teacher, you know, but to listen to Sheikh Abdul Nasser teach us seerah of the Prophet Muhammad, you know, or to teach us Quran, or to teach us the beauty of fiqh, right? It's going to be hard, and there's going to be obstacles, but just do it. Allah knows.
Right, Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. So with that segue actually of studying at Mufti Kamani's feet, we actually are now going to shift over to Mufti Kamani, who is one of our esteemed instructors here at the seminary. Been with us now for a few years. He asked me not to go too elaborate on the intro, so I will respect his wishes and turn it over to him, one of my favorite people to listen to. He's going to, inshallah, talk about seeking knowledge with everyone here. So with that, Mufti Kamani, go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. This path of seeking sacred Islamic knowledge is one that is greatly rewarding. It's so virtuous. The example of the knowledge of the deen is like one who is far away, sitting in a plane in the cabin, looking at the screen in front of them, and they're analyzing the map that's in front of them heading to their destination. And when they look at the picture, they see the image of the ocean, the seas, and they think to themselves, wow, this is so small. But then you look out the window and you realize that you've been flying over this part of the image for a few hours. You begin to appreciate the depth of it, the breadth of it. And then as you get closer to the body of water, you truly begin to understand how deep it is. And then you ask someone who's standing at the beach with their body soaked in the water, chest down, and they say to themselves that I had no idea how deep this water actually was. The further you are from this deen, the more you'll think that it's nothing. It's a walk in the park. This is simple, basic stuff. I don't know why these guys spend so much time studying it. But as you get closer and closer, you begin to understand, appreciate, and realize that there's so much to learn that if you were to dedicate your entire life to it, it wouldn't come to an end. You'd only be able to scratch the surface very briefly. There's an example of a story mentioned of a student who was going to study knowledge in Azhar University, the famous known Cairo University. He was going from Palestine to study, and when his time came to depart from his community, the whole community gathered together to see him off. Everyone was excited that one of ours is going to study the deen. He's going to come back. He'll have knowledge. He'll teach us. He'll be a community guide. The student went, he studied, he came back 1 year later. And when he came back, the community gathered and they said, "What did you learn? Tell us." And he said to them, "I have learned almost all of the knowledge." They're like, "Wow, that's interesting. This guy's really good." He then went again for another year and came back a year later. They asked him, "What did you learn?" He said, "I've learned half of knowledge." Rather than increasing, his knowledge is decreasing, because the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. And then he went again and he came back the third time and they asked him, "How much do you know?" And he said, "I have come to a realization today after years of studying that I am nothing more than a jahil, an ignorant person. The ulama of the past were the people of knowledge." I share this anecdote to create an awareness, a realization that the sacred knowledge of the deen is one that's a long journey. We live in a world today where people are more interested in the end result and are looking for ways to bypass the process. People want to be imams and khatibs and go to their MSAs and do halaqas there, their community gatherings, speak there, be invited to the social gatherings as speakers. So they're looking for the shortest path to that. How can I become an ustad or ustada, a sheikh or sheikha, within 9 months? We have become a Taco Bell nation. That I want to eat, but I want to eat through drive-through, and I want it to be cheap. I don't want to spend money. You know, this is where all the guys and girls in college are like, "Yeah, that's what we want. We want Taco Bell." But our ummah has been more of a fine dining cuisine people, where we're interested in the process, we're interested in the journey, we're interested in the experience. And the end result of being a community leader was coincidental, and it was a result of a responsibility that was given to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Otherwise, the main thing was always studying the knowledge. So you didn't find people who were looking for programs that lasted 9 months. You tell Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi, Imam Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, that I'm interested in an Islamic studies program and in 9 months I will become an allama. What do you think? I can't imagine the look on their face. I mean, that would be a profound, phenomenal meme. Just the look on Imam Bukhari's face at that moment, like, this guy crazy? Studying Islam in 9 months? Why would you want to do that? Isn't this supposed to be your lifelong endeavor? That you want it to be longer and you want to study more and you want to travel more. You look at Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi, visits multiple major centers of knowledge, memorizing hadith, studying hadith, the likes of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, who's dedicated their life studying. And the beautiful thing is that when we look at scholars, even in our community, no matter what part of the world you're from, you're joining us today from, I bet if you have had a conversation with your local imam or scholar, they have probably said that I'm a student of knowledge even today. I graduated many years ago, but I'm still a student of knowledge. When we finished off our studies and were graduating, our teacher was handing us a certificate. And I remember I had a big smile on my face because I was graduating that day. I had been waiting for this day for 9 years, really excited. And when my teacher gave me the certificate, he said to me in a soft voice that this certificate certifies that now you can go and study the deen on your own. It's not a certification that you're a scholar. Until now, you needed someone to hold your hand. Now you can continue studying without anyone holding your hand. Go and study for as long as you live. Now, when you hear this sort of stuff, that studying the deen is a long process, when you hear this kind of stuff, that studying Islam has a sacrifice involved. It starts with admitting your ignorance, developing a desire for it. This is where most people tap out. I can't do this. I was looking for a 45-minute YouTube lecture, and that was my dosage for the week. I was looking for a 3-minute YouTube reminder with the title, very emotional, spiritually uplifting, you will definitely cry. And that's what I was going to click on. And now this guy's calling me, or these people are calling me to study for a year, 2 years, 5 years. Well, only that person can make this sacrifice and develop the courage to take on this journey, who understands what they're doing and can appreciate the value of this knowledge. I was watching the stream today as the students were coming on and off with Umar, and Umar was asking them questions, and Sheikh Abdul Nasir was speaking, some of the other asatidha teachers were also speaking. And I had some commitments earlier. I was teaching in the morning, so just in and out in between the lecture, I was peeking over to see what was going on and how the conversation was going. And for all the students that were speaking, it was beautiful for me as a teacher because I was able to see the students speaking today so confidently, so proudly over their journey of seeking knowledge. And all of them, I remember them being in the classroom on the first day. I remember these same students today that were smiling and saying it was awesome and they were happy they did it. I remember them on day one. I remember every single one of them. And the look on their face was skepticism, doubt in their own ability, doubt in whether this would ever happen, not sure if this was something that they could accomplish. I remember the look on every one of their faces. They may not remember, but I remember. And I remember every year I do this. When I see that look on their face, I make dua to Allah, Ya Allah, give them himmah, courage, open up their path, and allow them to reach a place where even they can't imagine their reach is. And today when I see them speaking before you, I can't tell you how much joy it brings to me. It brings me so much happiness, every one of them. So the progress in this journey is there, but you have to come with sincerity and you have to be willing to put time into it. You have to be willing to put effort into it. All of this is only possible if there is an appreciation for this knowledge. And that's where it all starts. Why this knowledge? Why this deen? There are so many things that could be said. The one thing I think of is 1400 years ago, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came down from a cave, having received his first revelation. He comes to his wife Khadija radiallahu anha. She embraces him. He tells her what happened. She says to him, I believe in you. In that moment, if you try to just be a spectator and just look at the two of them in their house, this man is embraced by his wife and his wife is telling him everything will be okay. We'll get through this. And in his mind, he's thinking, Allah has just given me command to take Islam to the corners of the world. How am I going to get it to America? How am I going to get it there? And then 1400 years later, you have this beautiful group of people who are standing up to that call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who are willing to put their lives on hold to fulfill that desire and dream of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every time Ustada Samarina speaks, she is further proving that once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a promise to his prophet, he fulfills it. She is establishing through her words that, Ya Rasulullah, Allah gave you companions who lived during your life, who sacrificed everything for you. We didn't see you, but we're holding the fort down. We're doing it. And it's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. One day, Sabrina is going to bring her gugu to class, and her little daughter is going to come, and she's going to sit down, and she's going to be studying hadith, and she'll be a scholar, inshallah, and she'll be teaching the ummah. So we do this first and foremost out of our love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wanted mankind to understand his message. And we as individuals, and I know this stream right here probably has a fraction of the number of attendees we would usually get for a program. Usually we have like hundreds and sometimes even in thousands. This is one of those events where you might have like 60, 70 people. And that's cool because it just reminds us of the type of people we're speaking to. We're speaking to a very focused group of individuals. We're speaking to a group of people who are willing to go above and beyond. Once you understand the virtue of this knowledge and understand that you putting your life on hold to come and do this and endure these sacrifices is for the sake of Allah. You want people to hear the word of Allah. You want this Islam to be represented properly, because if we don't stand up today, someone else will steal our narrative. You're doing this for your own self, so you can become more aware of what it means to be a good Muslim. It's not all about teaching, it's about self-reform. You're coming to study so that with the Quran that you read isn't just text in a book, rather it's a conversation between you and Allah, because you can connect with that message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by reading it directly. And even though right now you may not have the skill set, and you may think that this goal is way too far for you, I tell you right now, there isn't a person today who speaks from the minbar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but there was a day in their life where they did not think they would make it there. Not one of them. When I finished memorizing the Quran, my teacher said to me, well, it wasn't my teacher, it was my brother's teacher, Sheikh Sulaiman. He said to me that, Hussein, go and learn Arabic so you can understand the Quran. And as a student, I was young, I was like, yeah, sure, inshallah. In my mind, I was thinking, that's not going to happen. Like, I don't know anything, I'm a dummy. And I mean, that observation of myself stands true even today. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the path and He facilitated. And today we're here and we're speaking. Learn and try to appreciate that the people who lived during the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sacrificed tremendously for the sake of this deen. And it's their sacrifices that today we bear the fruit of. And tomorrow, if we want this Islam to continue, and we want the greater community to see the beauty of Islam and not have our narrative hijacked, we're going to have to step up. We will need young men and women of our community standing up and saying, I'm going to study. You know, and for too long, the women of our community have been deprived of their opportunity to study, an equal opportunity to study. It's time that that changes. We want the sisters to come in the doors and come and study in our classrooms. We want them to come and study. We want them to come and learn. So that way they can go back to their communities. I show a lot of empathy and love to my male students in the classroom, but honestly, when I see female students in my classroom, I give them extra attention because I know that is a segment of the community that is underserved, unfortunately. And we have young girls in our community, and I have a daughter, right? And she's going to grow up one day, and she's going to need an Ustada Samrina. She's going to need an Ustada Fatima. She's going to need an Ustada Atifa. She's going to need one day Rabia to be her mentor. She's going to need a Sally one day to coach her and to advise her. She's going to need all these people. Without them, what's my daughter going to do? For too long, parts of our community have been far from the deen. And these doubts only exist because no one has communicated Islam logically, properly to them in a structured fashion. That's why we go to these colleges and universities and even high schools, middle schools, and kids have doubt of Islam because no one has delivered Islam to them in a way that they understand. And with all due respect and so much love and du'as that go out to our imams in the community, they've done a phenomenal job. And my statement is not meant to discredit them in any way or to, devalue their efforts. Rather, it's to say that what they did was phenomenal and what they're doing is amazing, but one day we will carry our imams to the graveyards. And that's when we're going to need a new generation. I'm telling you, I've seen pictures of my teachers when they were young and they had those black beards. They had that amazing youthful look like our dear Umar Usman has. But what happens in time? Those same teachers, we remember their hair went white. And then we were burdened and tested by Allah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused them to leave the world, and we carried them to the graveyard. And I remember the day that my teacher, rahimahullah, passed away. Last year, the 15th of Sha'ban. Carrying him to the graveyard was very hard, and it was very heavy on my heart. And I understood that day that a great fountain of knowledge had left. But I also knew that the day he left was a day that he also left behind thousands of people who would represent the knowledge that he stood for and he believed in. And ultimately, all these people were representing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is hope in our future as long as there are people today who are working towards that future. That's what we want. We want people we don't want everyone to come. We want people to come who are dedicated. This is not a qiyam. This is not a youth halaqa. We want people to come forward who are willing to take that step. If you doubt yourself, don't worry about it. We want you to come anyway. We'll help you with that. If you're not sure about your skills, don't worry about that. You come. We'll take care of that. We'll help you with that. However, we need you to believe in what you're doing, and we need you to be willing to take on the challenge of studying. If you can do those two things, we as an institution will try our best. We're not perfect, but we will try our best to help you through the rest of the pathway. And inshallah, you will reach your goal. But you must understand the value of your knowledge. Read the lives of the companions. Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, who was a cousin of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, would sit outside the doors of the more senior companions during the hot hours of the day. And they would, waiting for them to come out. The Sahabi would be inside his house taking a nap. That was a common practice. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu would sit there and wait there and wait there, and he would get exhausted. So he would take a shawl, wrap it up, put it on the ground, put his head against it and go to sleep. And then when he would wake up, the other Sahabi whose house it was would be standing in front of him, and he would say, Ibn Abbas, what are you doing here? If you needed me, you should have called me. You're the cousin of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're people of honor. We would have come to you. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu would say, no, that's not how this works. The seeker always comes to the teacher. And I'm the seeker. I'm here to study. Look at the examples of the scholars of the past and the sacrifices they took on. Sheikh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda has a phenomenal book called Safhat min Sabr al-Ulama. Pages regarding the patience of the scholars of the past, what they endured to attain that knowledge, what they had to go through. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi went from city to city for 17, 18 years, just traveling and traveling and traveling and traveling. That's how he became Imam Bukhari. This is how these people became who they were. I'll share a story with you, and the purpose of sharing this story is to once again create an appreciation for what people were willing to do for knowledge before us, how far they were willing to go. At Qalam, we try to facilitate the experience for our students as much as possible. Alhamdulillah, these days students take the classes online and also on campus, and even in campus, mashallah, they have these phenomenal, beautiful water bottles across their tables, and they have these snack bars in the lounges, and everyone's doing potlucks on campus. And that year one Arabic class has partied more than anyone has. When they would have their potluck party on campus, by the way, the whole Qalam campus would be excited. Yes, year one finished a chapter. The fact that they finished a chapter means there will be lunch now for everyone on campus. Like, that's the experience that we had. Haris Qudsi coming to campus with a brisket every few weeks. I mean, that's our experience, and giving everyone brisket. And mashallah, the year 3 students bringing their snacks and doing their year 4 students, all these guys, the Dora students doing their fancy breakfast parties. Honestly, I'm not qualified to speak on most of these parties and the food that was served. The expert in this field would be Abdullah Jangda, mashallah, who would carefully scout out the whole menu every time. But all that aside, inside jokes aside, another time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Abdullah for showing so much love to everyone on campus by honoring us all with his presence every time there was a meal. But with that aside, when I look at the scholars of the past, it was a different experience, guys. There was a scholar by the name of Sheikh Siddiq Bandwi, rahimahullah ta'ala, a great scholar. He was known as one of the great qadis of his time, a great reciter of the Quran. He was poor. He wanted to study the deen. He had 2 sisters, and they were both, they both had disabilities of different sorts. They had different disabilities. He said to his mom that he wanted to study. His mom said to him, look, you can go and study. However, I won't be able to financially support you in any way at all because all of our finances are directed towards the well-being of your sisters. Sheikh Siddiq left his hometown and he went to the nearby madrasa, maybe a few cities down. He traveled across the country. He got there. When he got to that village where the madrasa was, he spoke to the principal and said, I'd like to study here. The principal said to him that you can study here without any tuition. You can live here without paying tuition too. However, we will not be able to provide any food for you. He said, okay. The sheikh would study there, young kid at the time, study there, he would live there. But when it came time for eating, he wouldn't be allowed to enter into the dining hall because he did not pay for the food. What he would do in the afternoon while students would take rest for their midday nap, he would go to the nearby village. And there was a Hindu man there. He went into contract with a Hindu man. And the Hindu person said to him that it'll be your responsibility to take 2 buckets from my home every afternoon, go to the other village, there's a well there, fill up the 2 buckets with water and bring it back. So every day, this young kid who was frail, not like some strong bodybuilder, tough person, just a skinny person, he would carry 2 buckets empty to the other side of the village, fill them up with water. I don't even know how he would carry them back. I carry a bucket of water for a few feet and my arms start hurting, and he would carry them all the way back to that man's house. He says that my arms would be in so much pain that I would cry sometimes. But I would keep going, I would continue stepping, and I would continue walking, thinking of the reward that Allah would give me for the sacrifices that I was taking on today. I would wipe my tears and I would continue on with the journey with the buckets, thinking that how one day when I met Rasulullah, he would embrace me. It was that thought that allowed me to continue to walk and continue to move forward. He says that sometimes what would happen is I would take the buckets, and this man that he would deliver the water to would sometimes be on the 2nd or 3rd floor. He said I would reach the guy's building, and I would climb the first flight of stairs. And I would be in the middle of the 2nd flight of stairs, and I would slip. The buckets would fall. I would fall down. I would pick up those buckets and walk all the way to the well again. And at the end of doing this entire thing every day, in return, his employer would give him 1 roti, 1 piece of bread. And that was my lunch and that was my dinner. He says, I continued to study until one day there was another kid from my village who came and joined me. He had the same circumstance where he couldn't pay. The madrasa offered him the same thing, that you can, the institution said that you can study here, you can live here, but you can't eat here. So my friend was about to go back home because how would he study without eating? So I said to my friend, you study, I'll take care of your food. And he says, from that day onwards, I took that 1 bread and I divided it in half. I gave half to him and I kept half for myself. Every time I hear the story, it sends chills down my spine. I think of how hard it must have been for him carrying those buckets, and how he must have cried every time he dropped those buckets. But then I think of how strong his willpower was, how much he looked forward to the smile of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How meaningful it must have been for him to take a hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to another human being. What kind of strength it must have given him. That's mind-blowing. Allah gave me the honor when I was young to sit in one of the durus of Sheikh Siddiq Bandhavi rahimahullah ta'ala. And I was a young kid at the time, maybe 7 years old. And I remember just being in that gathering, even though I didn't understand a lick of what he said. But there was a presence that he carried, that when I saw the man, I told myself, Ya Allah, allow me to reach a maqam like this. But that comes through sacrifice, my friends. That comes through going out of your way. Bilal talked about his sacrifice of studying and going to college at the same time. Sally talked about her sacrifice of family and the kids and studying. We had Rabia talking about her sacrifice, and Samrina talking about the kids running around on campus and her sacrifice of studying. There are so many. We have Sister Aisha Beg, mashallah. She had a whole clan that came to her with campus every day, mashallah, and the sacrifice involved in looking after her kids and studying. And the sacrifice of Imam Herbert, 16 hours a day, he said he was working and yet still studying. I'm not sure if Ustada Atifa has spoken yet or not, but she, mashallah, is a teacher now. She was a student. I remember her going to college and missing my Mishkat class because she was in her classes. And at the back of my mind, I thought, Ustada Atifa, probably isn't listening to any of the recordings, and she's probably just bunking my class. And then I remember one day she came to me and said to me, Mufti Sahab, I just have 2 lectures left to catch up. My face at that time, I kept it really straight. I was like, mashallah. But in my mind, I was like, what? She's been listening to all these lectures? And in those days, by the way, the classes used to be 3 hours long, or hour and a half. They were really long classes. And she's telling me that I've been keeping up with all. This is sacrifice, my friends. One of my good friends and someone who is, is a committed student, Haris, from Baltimore, left his family behind. His father is so dear to him. Like every child, like I think mentioning names is maybe insulting to the people whose names I don't mention, but I mention some of these names because I know the sacrifice they went through. Every few days I would talk to Haris and he would say to me, Mufti Sahab, I want to go back to Baltimore. I'm going to study distance. I say, why? He says, I want to be close to my father, my father, my father, my father. That's all he talked about, this guy. My father, my father, my father. It's not easy. And I think that's what I want to say to you guys. And it's been said very clearly throughout the day that this journey is not an easy one. I'm not kidding. I actually feel that by only mentioning some names, I've done injustice to the others. Because every student has a crazy sacrifice that they've taken on to come. Crazy sacrifices. But Allah reward them. And our du'as as teachers at the Institute is that Allah will take them to places where they can't even imagine that they're going to land. And when they get there, they'll understand that this was a result of the sacrifices they made. بقدر الكد تكتسب المعالي ومن طلب العلا سهر الليالي. What you put in is what you're going to get out, my friends. And this journey requires a lot of input. It'll happen if you understand the virtue of your knowledge and understand how meaningful it is what we do. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards us and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts from us all. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant everyone here the himmah, the courage, the strength to take this path on. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Sometimes things are really rough, but that should never scare you away. There's a lot of learning, a lot of growth, beautiful environment. And I am sure, inshallah, for those of you who choose to take this on, you'll benefit tremendously. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts and that Allah Azza wa Jal grants us all tawfiq to be from His beloved and close, near awliya. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, with that, we're going to transition into our next session. The title of it is Student Experiences Outside the Classroom. We've talked a lot about what happens in the class. Now, what about outside the class? After class is done, do you just dip and you're gone and you're on your own, or is there something more to it? So for that, we have Ustadha Atifa, who is an instructor at the Qalam Seminary. She's someone who I just mentioned right now. She comes from Ohio, mashallah, studied at the University of Northwestern, did her master's and graduated from our program, the 5-year program. Mashallah, she is a regular now when it comes to lecturing across the nation. She's doing some amazing work. So she speaks from a perspective of being a teacher and also from previously being a student. And with her today on the panel, we have Haris Qudsi, who is also someone very dear and near to us all. Haris, mashallah, is a student of knowledge. He's studied with us for multiple years now. He is in the final year, 1 week away from graduation. 7 days from now, he will be putting a turban on his own head, sitting in his own living room for his graduation, inshallah. And he's from Baltimore. He served in many different capacities as a community leader. So with that, we have both of them. We have Ustadha Atifa and Haris here. I have a lot of comments to make, but many of them I'll leave them for another time, inshallah. With that said, I'm going to let them take this session, inshallah, and educate us and inspire us all. Barakallah.
You forgot to mention the best city in America, Baltimore, mashallah.
See, Haris, you need to be very careful how much you troll right now. But I'll let you be. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this session is to talk about the student experience outside of the classroom. One of Qalam is founded on a three-pronged mission, and those three prongs are ta'lim, tarbiyah, and suhbah. Ta'lim refers to the grounded Islamic knowledge that we provide. Tarbiyah refers to the practical training. And suhbah refers to, if I could just simplify it, it's just the relationships that you build with the people around you. So these three aspects are very key aspects. A lot of times people look at the seminary and they say, okay, I understand education, I understand studying, and okay, maybe I understand that practical training, but literally also this suhbah aspect is an entire 1/3 of the program, and that's the aspect that we are going to be talking about today. So suhbah being the relationship with one's classmates, that is actually a very intentional part of the seminary, and it's done at a number of different levels. First of all, we encourage suhbah, that companionship, that those relationships amongst each other's classmates. So between the year 1 students, year 2 students, year 3, 4, and 5, so on, amongst each class, the teachers encourage those relationships and bonds built within the class. The purpose for that is, manyfold, right? The benefit for that is manyfold. You're in this together. The idea of that, we're all in the same boat together. We're all experiencing and learning together, whether it be, implementing study sessions and review sessions, just, group study, things like that, group activities. That's definitely something that is encouraged amongst the students. At a second level, we encourage suhbah and those relationships between upperclassmen and underclassmen. Something that was mentioned amongst the student testimonials previously was the idea of being assigned a mentor. So the year 1 students and the year 2 students specifically, and we're going to talk about why those two classes specifically based on our application process and admissions and things like that, which we'll talk about later. But specifically those 2 classes being the newest classes, they are each student is assigned a mentor from the Alamiya students to really guide them and assist them and be there for them as that big brother or big sister. At a third level, we encourage suhbah and those relationships between amongst all the brothers and amongst all the sisters. So specifically for that, that's one of the reasons why we have Brother Harz Qudsi on this call or on this webinar, is because he was the student coordinator, or he serves as the student coordinator for the brothers. And we do also have a sister's student coordinator, Sister Jasmine Ali. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us on this call. But specifically holding programs and just in providing for that relationship and those that culture, that student culture between amongst the brothers and amongst the sisters. And finally, as an entire campus, we encourage that suhbah and those relationships. Of course, that's definitely done within the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. Some of the things that Mufti Kamani mentioned is the fact that, when there is a potluck in the year 1 class, the entire campus is welcome, and that's part of those relationships that are built and that are really important. One of the things that we've also make sure to implement is to make sure that we have, Salah is prayed on campus for the entire campus. There are no, classes are stopped and everybody prays together, and that really creates that bonds and those bonds of spirituality that are so very important. While those are implemented at 4 different levels, there are also 3 different groups of people that are actually responsible for making this suhbah experience happen. It's not something that we just say, oh, it just happens, or like, of course, you have to pray. Why wouldn't you pray together? No, it's very intentionally done. At the first level, or the first group of people that are responsible for intentionally making this happen is the teachers themselves, right? Encouraging group study, encouraging, working with your classmates. That's definitely something that they implement and encourage inside the classroom and then outside of the classroom. Personally, myself, I actually serve along with being a teacher at the seminary, I serve in the position of being the head of student affairs. And what that means is that I serve as a liaison between the student coordinators and the academic team and the other teachers and instructors to make sure that every single individual student is having the best experience they possibly can have at the seminary, right? We're not just interested in every student doing well academically, but if somebody is not showing up to class, there's certain things that are going on in their life and they're not able to be at their peak, we want to know, not for disciplinary purposes, but to be able to be there and help, because the idea is that we are a family and family looks after one another. And lastly, like I mentioned, is the student coordinators, Brother Haris Qudsi, who is responsible for managing the just social activities and social experience of all of the brothers, and Sister Jasmine Ali responsible for on the sister side. So with that, I want to just go ahead and transition over to Brother Haris Qudsi, who can go talk about some of the things that he's implemented and he's put into place to create that family environment that we strive for at Qalam.
جزاك الله خير. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. So جزاك الله خير, first and foremost to Ustad Atifa for going into this discussion and kind of getting us started on this, because this is something I'm very passionate about personally. When you talk about suhbah, it is by far one of the greatest factors that led to the greatness of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. When you talk about the Sahaba and you talk about how they were in their lives, it wasn't just because the Prophet ﷺ taught them the Quran. Of course, that was a huge part of it. It wasn't just because they got to hear the words of the Prophet ﷺ, but that part of it, that they were in that same place, they were always right next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was the element that truly allowed them to take the next step. And for us, when you talk about the Prophet ﷺ, we don't have the Prophet ﷺ anymore, but we do have the next best thing, if you will, which is the Prophet ﷺ said that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. And so being in that, having that close companionship with the scholars, having a relationship like I'm very proud to say and very glad and very blessed to have with Mufti Kamani, for example, those are the kind of relationships that can carry you a long way in your life. And so that's something we wanted to just focus on. And we actually have a bit of a small presentation to kind of to bring up. So if Brother Abdullah, who's on the back end, can put that up. This is just about kind of what we do and what the Suhbah initiative, that's just a little fancy marketing name I gave it, what it's about, right? Why it is that we do it and what the idea behind it is. First and foremost is that we have, Salah Atfa mentioned that there's 3 objectives broadly with the seminary, but within the Suhbah element, there's even more that you break it down to, right? And the 3 major objectives. Number 1, grow spiritually. You cannot grow spiritually until and unless you are able to sit with your teachers and recognize and see their own level of spirituality, until you can see how they connect with the Quran, how they connect with the Prophet ﷺ through his words. Right? So that's the first element. The next is to build lifelong connections. It's not an exaggeration, and anybody who comes will tell you that the relationships that you build in that first year that you're here will last for the rest of your life. Sister Samrina was Ustad Samrina was Ustad Atifa's classmate, and Ustad Fatima was also Ustad Atifa's classmate. So think about what that means, that these relationships are not simply just tertiary, they're not superficial, but they're lifelong friendships. And anybody who's even come for 1 year, they're still in the group with their classmates. They're still always talking. Whenever they go visit the city that their classmate is from, they'll say, "Hey, I'm in town, bro. Come on, let's meet up." Or for the sisters, same thing. I can't speak to that, of course. And Sister Jasmine, mashallah, I want to give her a quick shout out. She does amazing work, mashallah. She's always putting in so much time and effort. May Allah reward her. And lastly, and this is really the key thing, I think, at the end of the day, is have a truly life-changing experience. Because you talk about coming to Qalam. People come to Qalam because they want something different. They want the opportunity to live a new life. Right? Maybe not different, maybe not very different, but a new life, one that's filled with understanding of the Quran, understanding of the Sunnah, understanding of the Islamic sciences like everybody else spoke about before. And beyond that, it's then also having that connection with your teachers. You have this experience where you spend the entire year surrounded by knowledge, by people of knowledge, by brothers and sisters who are seeking that very same knowledge, your peers, your kin in that sense. It's mentioned that in regards to the bond between people of knowledge is that al-ilmu rahimun bayna ahlihi, that knowledge is a bond of a family between its people. So that is that element of having a true life-changing experience, that you come here, you spend a year around these people, and it inspires you to be better. what is it that we do in regards to the Suhba initiative? Well, there's two things in particular. Number one, we have weekly, monthly, semesterly activities geared towards fulfilling our three objectives. Semesterly is not a word, but whatever, I can do what I want because I'm presenting. So these are towards fulfilling those three objectives. And then we have mentorship. And mentorship is probably, it's that first step towards senior students being able to start to understand how to be like our teachers in the mentorship that they offer to the students, but also an opportunity for younger students to learn from senior students. Mufti Kamani and Sheikh Nasir will tell stories all the time about senior students who took them under their wings or that they took under their wing, who were able to grow and flourish just because of the fact that they were able to be there for them. They were able to offer them that mentorship. So to understand the mentorship element, what we do is each student will be assigned a mentor from amongst the senior students. So all the new incoming students, whether you're in the first year or second year, whether you skip the first year or not, you will be assigned a mentor from amongst the senior students. These mentors are not just haphazardly, like, you don't just throw it at like a dartboard and say, okay, Muhammad with Abdullah or Habib with Muzammil, whatever. That's not how it goes, right? The way it actually goes will be that there's a interview that's done prior to the students coming. And the coordinator will basically just have a quick call with the students and just say, hey, Assalamu alaikum, I just want to get to know you. I wanted to know how you're doing. Tell me about yourself, who you are. And just through that conversation, kind of getting an idea for how to be able to, give this person the best fit for the mentorship element. And if you have questions, you want to have somebody that you can turn to without jumping straight to the very top of the food chain, right? It's daunting to go up to your teachers, even though the teachers, alhamdulillah, make it so accessible. It's very, very daunting to be like, let me just go up to Mufti Kamani and ask him how I'm supposed to be reading, this book correctly. Or let me go up to Sheikh Abdul Nasser and ask him about how we're supposed to understand this part of the tafsir. Rather, you might want to go to a peer first. You might want to go to someone who is more, what's the word? More kind of has been in your shoes in the same place, right? So that's kind of how you want to understand it. So that and having the ability to be able to go to those people, that's something that's invaluable because that relationship will again be lifelong. For brothers, the activities that are weekly and bi-weekly, just some examples. For example, we have brothers ball, so brothers go out and play basketball or soccer. We've had both. Every Thursday from Maghrib Al Masjid for basketball, we had that. Brothers game nights, we play video games, we play board games, whatever it is, a whole bunch of different things. Get together, have pizza, have some fun. Mufti Saab has had halaqas. We go to his halaqa, we sit there, we get to learn from him, and then afterwards, once we complete that, once the halaqah is over, we go out with Mufti Kamani to go to enjoy some time. And same with Sheikh Abdul Nasser. That was something we were doing every Wednesday after Maghrib. On the monthly activities, it's at least one of these will happen. So having a barbecue, having a pool party. I will tell you something. I am a huge barbecue person, and I also very much enjoy steaks. And this sounds so bougie, but I will tell you that the brothers for the last 3 years, alhamdulillah, have always had a steak night. And that is exactly what you think it sounds like. Having a pool party, having laser tag, all these different types of things, go-karting, these are just kind of like more monthly. Like at least once in the month, we'll have some kind of activity where it's a bit broader in its scope. So on the semesterly end, we have a trip to Austin that we take. So, all the brothers go, the sisters go on a separate date. They go on their own time. And everyone's going to go and get to see the sights, get to hang out, get to spend time with the shuyukh, go hiking, get some lessons. And then, of course, some service as well, because that's a big part of what we do is giving back to the community, being able to help those in need, whether they're Muslim or they're not Muslim. It doesn't matter because we're here to serve everybody, inshallah. Just some final notes for everybody in this presentation. If you're moving to Texas, if you're moving to Dallas, you need a car. Very much so. Plan to have a car. Not having a car does not work here because everything is far from everything. And you don't know what that means until you move here. Okay, everything is far from everything. I think Ustad Atfa can probably attest to that as well. There are some costs that are involved with certain activities as well. And then if you have any issues, of course, don't ever feel like you can't do something. So And then for actual dates and things like that, we'll always announce it at least 2 weeks in advance. We have a WhatsApp group of all the brothers where they can, we chat, we send out notifications, things. And all students are expected to attend these things. It is important to be a part of it, because I will tell you personally that I've seen examples of brothers who, were kind of like, I don't know, I could probably just relax or study or do this and that. But this is just as much part of the curriculum as anything else, is being there with your brothers, being there with your classmates, being there with your teachers, and getting to learn about all the different things that, that are part of this experience. There are some exceptions, of course, but, that's about it. And as far as some important points to finish off with, being here, being at Qalam, being in a position to study the deen, too often people doubt themselves, right? This is Shaitan's trick, as Imam Herbert mentioned earlier, right? You start, when somebody's on that path, Shaitan only starts to attack more. And you have to remember that if you've been blessed, you have been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll tell you, I will never forget, in my first days, when I first started studying, I used to text my teacher, Sheikh Yasin. I didn't start at Qalam, just a heads up. I used to text my teacher and I'd say, Sheikh, I don't feel like I belong here. I feel like I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough to be part of this. And I'm part of this Alamiya program. I don't think I deserve to be here. And he would text me back and say, this is Shaitan's waswasa. You're here right now. You deserve to be here. You're somebody who is on this path because Allah wants you on this path. So remember that when you come, inshallah, and I'm not saying if, I'm saying when you come, remember that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have given you the opportunity to do that. And lastly, if you ever need someone to talk to, just know you can always reach out. You can always, apologies, that's our class chat. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions now about suhbah or anything. Just reach out to me. Same thing if feel like you're not fitting in. If you feel like anything's off, just reach out. Right? That's the key thing. Always be willing to seek help when you need it. And just remember, you got a friend in me. Okay. You can take off the screen, Abdullah. There it is. Anything to add, Atifa?
No, that was it. Jazakumullahu khairan. So we'll close off this session, inshallah. Like Brother Harris said, he mentioned the things that were specifically for the brothers, but know that there is a girl's sister's version of that as well. And you can reach out to Brother Harris at that email address for any information regarding that as well. With that, we'll transition into the next portion of our program today, which is a video highlighting the Arabic students, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So the interesting thing about teaching Arabic at the Qalam Seminary is that the Arabic education is no longer just an individual goal. It's not studying Arabic in a vacuum, but it's part of this larger education system. It's part of a 5-year seminary. So what's beautiful is that students, they always know where they're supposed to go with their Arabic. So whatever skills they gain throughout the year, whatever insight that they gain, they take that with them into their continuing education through the seminary.
My wife is a teacher. Yes, she has a master's in education, and even she says that a lot of the teaching techniques that Ustad Ubaidullah used, that those are things that she learned while learning to become a teacher. There's a difference between just being a teacher and being an educator, and it is very obvious that he's an educator. The techniques that he uses, and there's definitely there's a curriculum behind it. It's not just like come in and do this concept today and do something else tomorrow. It builds from day one until now, almost 3 months in. We've been building towards something, and Ustad Ubaidullah tells us periodically what our goals are. That hey, this is what we're going to be doing in 2 months. We're building towards that.
Previously, the Qalam Seminary was a 4-year seminary, and in order for students to get admitted into the program, they had to be proficient in Arabic, enough so that they can read the Quran and translate, and so that they can vowel classical Arabic texts that normally don't have vowels, vowel them correctly based on their understanding of grammar, and translate in a meaningful way. So we made those two things our ultimate goal at the Arabic program. So those are the only two objectives we work on throughout the year. And it seems like, when you first, if you just read that on paper, you read that on our website, that really you have two objectives. Like there's so many things you could be doing with a language. It seems like it's not that much, but when you unpack both of those things, you realize that it's a lot of work to become proficient in those two things. And the way I like to think about it is that we're very focused on these two things. And alhamdulillah, because of that focus on two objectives, students see those results very quickly, and they can always track their progress and measure it against this overall objective.
A goal of mine coming to Qalam was to forge a better relationship with the Quran and to just draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, period. And I think that being able to deal with the Quran, to look at a new ayah every single day and break it down and understand the translation of it, and now we're slowly going into the tafsir of these ayahs, I definitely feel like I'm getting closer to achieving that goal. But I feel like seeking ilm is a journey. It's never gonna end. For me, inshallah, after finishing the Arabic program, I hope that I'm able to have a good foundation of Arabic to move on in Qalam and to continue with the seminary.
The closest thing I can think of is for someone to be able to read an English sentence and understand, oh, there's an action in this sentence or a verb. Here's a person that's doing the action. Here's a person that's affected by the action. Or here's a subject, here's a predicate. So when you know the language at that level, that means you understand how the language works. You understand how to put words together. You understand how to dissect maybe a more complicated sentence and make sense of it. So they're able to do that with Arabic. So they can open the Quran and they can understand how the words are coming together. And then based on that understanding, they can translate in a meaningful way.
One thing that really stuck with me, especially at the beginning of the year, was the emphasis on sohbah, on brotherhood and companionship that the teachers here have really put into their curriculum. So it's not really a program where you come in, stay 6 hours and go home and just shut yourself in studying or finishing up or doing work. You're really engaging with everybody there. They put a very heavy emphasis on working together and making connections so that your time here isn't like you clock in, you clock out, So the environment is very friendly. It's very open to a lot of people. I made friends that, knowing their stories now, after I've gotten to know them so well, if I met them on the street, I probably wouldn't have connected with them in the same way. But the mutual understanding and drive to benefit from our deen and learn this language and things like that has kept us together, and inshallah will keep us together for much longer.
So one of the things I've learned over doing this for a few years now is that culture is never accidental, right? So whatever the culture is, that's something that we very consciously try to establish here. And it's beautiful when we hear from students that what we were trying to do, the culture we were trying to establish, is being perceived and received by the students. So that's always a beautiful thing. And yeah, ultimately, we always want to try to create a culture of learning, a culture of respect, and at the same time, also creating kind of a fun environment for learning, right? Where students enjoy coming to class. Students want to learn further. They're not just being forced to be there, but they really miss class when they don't have it. And that's one of the objectives that we all the teachers at the seminary try to set forth.
It was one of the most awesome things when we found out we were going to have classes with the other shuyukh. So we have a class with Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda on the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ, which is like literally we look forward to it every single week, because that's our spiritual, we're talking about how the Prophet ﷺ was like this and like that. We have Sheikh Mikail, and Sheikh Mikail has been teaching us different subjects and using different books. Right now we're going through Bidayatul Hidayah, the beginning of guidance by Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. So that is an excellent book, and Sheikh Mikail is always, making it interesting. Then we have Ustada Fatima for Ulum al-Quran, Ustada Atifa, who is right now teaching us fiqh, and we have Ustad Suhaib, who is going over the sciences of hadith. So all of those things are like bonus points for us because we didn't expect it, and when we got a chance to be exposed to it, I think for myself, I plan inshallah ta'ala to go on to the next year. It's going to make it much easier for me to grasp those subjects when I come to the next year because I've had some exposure in this year.
One of the important things when designing the full curriculum for this year, but we want to really plug it into the seminary as the first year of the Qalam Seminary. And one of the ways that we do that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we're very focused on Arabic, and that's a majority of what we do throughout our day. However, to provide further enrichment and a little bit of a break from Arabic, because again, as I mentioned, Arabic's very technical. It's a lot of work, like you're doing a lot of drills and solidifying things, and it can get very exhausting. So to kind of break the monotony of the day, or kind of give them a break from Arabic for a little while, we do have one period a day in which students cover different topics in Islamic studies. And what's beautiful about these subjects is that all of these subjects that they study in the first year of the Qalam Seminary, they get an introduction to them in English with qualified teachers. And then in their second year of study at the seminary, when they continue on into the following year, and now they're going to study these subjects through Arabic texts and classical texts and go in depth a little bit further, they'll have already had a primer in all of these topics in English. So they really do have a leg up from students who don't come in through the Arabic program to continue their studies, because if you go through the first year, the Arabic year, not only do you solidify your Arabic, but you get one pass and kind of a base understanding of all the sciences that you're going to be studying in the following year.
I think my biggest lesson is just putting your full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because knowledge is not something that you can just gain from a book. I think you have to pray about it. You have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you that knowledge, to open your heart to the knowledge. So yeah, I definitely think that tawakkul is a huge thing that I learned. I mean, prior to coming to Qalam, and that's definitely what pushed me to come to Qalam, was just putting full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and praying that He opens my heart to the knowledge and to the ilm.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone again. So this inshallah will be the last segment of our session today. And to just this part was just to go over a little bit of the application and admissions process. Now that you've learned all about the seminary, got a chance to hear from some of the teachers, administrators, students, and everyone. Now, how do you actually go about applying? So we'll have the website itself pulled up. We can go ahead and have that. Okay, so you'll come to the website. This is the qalamseminary.com website. And then I'm going to literally go through a step-by-step process. So you'll click on Apply Now. Let's see. Hopefully it comes up. Okay, well, when you click on Apply Now, you're actually going to be directed to this page, which is the admissions requirements. If you scroll through this page, depending on which program you're thinking about applying to, there's a classical Arabic program, which is a year 1, foundational Islamic studies, which is year 2, or Alamiya years 3 to 5. So for most, if not all people, either the first or the second year would be most relevant to you. So just make sure to take a look at the prerequisites for this program, so you just have an idea of what the expectations are before coming to the program. For the year 1 program, the prerequisites are that somebody has to be able to read Quran with fluency, right? Where the year 1 program is not meant to teach a student the Arabic letters. It's not to teach a student how to read the Quran. That's something that you need to already have the knowledge that you need to have coming in. And then writing Arabic at a basic level. So what that means is, like, again, being familiar with the letters, being able to being familiar with what like harakats are, and being able to just write Arabic. For the year 2 program, there are a few more prerequisites. The student should be somebody who has graduated from high school, either have a diploma or a high school equivalency, like the GED. Then they should also be old enough and mature enough to be able to handle the load of the program, and not just the load, but there is a maturity that is expected in the program. We do definitely have exceptions that have come through, but then those are exceptions, and we consider everybody on a case-by-case basis. After that, these are just different parts of the admissions process, and we'll just go through that when we get to the next step. So why it says the Alamiya years 3 to 5, that's actually like not relevant to anybody who is newly applying into the program. We consider people who have we definitely do the Alamiya applications at a very case-by-case basis, meaning that is limited to somebody who has already completed the year 2 program, or somebody like Brother Haris Qudsi, who has transferred into the program after having studied, studied not just Arabic, but also have been a part of a curriculum of Islamic studies. And then you would just, if you're interested, then you would just go ahead and email that email address, but you don't actually fill out the application for the Alamiya program. And then if you can scroll to the top again. Yeah, okay, so where it says apply to a program. Now, after you figured out which program you actually want to apply to, you would click to apply to program. So just to be clear and make sure, Arabic is a prerequisite for the Islamic Studies program. If you've never studied Arabic before, you don't know how to read classical Arabic without the harakat or vowel markings, you never studied Arabic grammar before, you will have to apply to the Arabic program, the year 1 program. It's only somebody who has actually gone through a curriculum of Arabic study that they would then be able to consider the year 2 program, the Islamic Studies program. So once you get to the application over here, you fill out your name, your date of birth, your email, your phone number, and then I want you to go to the section called class over there. Click on class. Okay, select class, and you'll see a whole bunch of options. Really, everything after Arabic is irrelevant. You're either applying to the seminary, which refers to the Islamic Studies program, or to Arabic. So let's click on Arabic first. Okay, and then you would have to actually go and click your school year. So go to select school year, select school year. There's just one option. The only, just to clarify, the only reason why there are other options on there is because it's just part of our system, our LMS that puts all of those options on there. But really, you would just click the first one that says 2020 to 2021 academic Arabic school year. So like Ustadha Fatima mentioned at the beginning of this program, that we are inshallah going to be starting in Arabic online for this coming year. So those details will be, whether you're doing on-site or online, that will be figured out just because of everything that's going on. Those are questions that we'll ask, while you're already in the admissions process. So that's not something that you need to select right now, especially since it's an offering that we are just making available. So go ahead and, you'd fill out all the rest of the questions on this. So once you've filled this out and you've clicked, filled out the whole entire application, you've selected next and completed everything, what you'll receive is that you'll get, make sure that you put down your correct email address. You'll receive an email to schedule a Quran reading assessment and an interview. So in that Quran reading assessment, you'll be asked to read a portion of the Quran. You'll be tested on like fluency and speed and just accuracy. You don't need to be a master tajweed reciter. You should be familiar with reading the Quran properly. And try your best, right? It's an assessment, so we'll let you know accordingly. But you should have familiarity with reading the Quran, and then the interview as well. And shortly afterwards, then you will receive basically your admissions decision. Now, if you can actually go to class and select the seminary option, please. So again, a person who's newly applying to the program, they either select Arabic or seminary. Okay, don't select anything else. So click on seminary and then go to school year. Now over here, because online is something that we have offered for the seminary, the Islamic Studies program, the year 2 program, it's something that we offered, have been offering for the past couple of years. Over here, we actually do divide it out. So if you're intending on, being an on-site student, then you would select the 2020-2021 seminary school year. That's for on-site. And then if you are planning on being online, then you would select the online option. Okay, so over here it is defined out. So now the particularity about this is that for the seminary, as opposed to the Arabic program, for the seminary, there are part-time or full-time options. Somebody can choose to attend all the classes and they would be considered a full-time student, or they could be part-time. Again, all of those details are figured out after you have already been admitted into the program, and we'll ask you what your plans are, whether you plan on being part-time and full-time, and an academic advisor will basically walk you through the different options and see what would be best for you to consider if you are considering part-time. So that's after, again, you submit all of that, you fill out all of your information, and you complete the application. Now, the seminary application is a little bit more involved. There are a few more prerequisites. So after you submit the application, what you will receive is an email, and in that email is a link. That link is to take a written Arabic assessment. So that written Arabic assessment tests one's Arabic grammar, understanding of the Arabic language, as well as translation skills. So you will it's basically like a Google form that you'll be linked to. You do have to take it in one sitting. So make sure that you do have, you feel good and confident about, your Arabic education and take it. But just, don't let it make you too nervous or scared. Have studied for it, right? Like, be aware of your Arabic knowledge. But like we said, we're going to be doing everything on a case-by-case basis. We look at the assessment. If you feel like you haven't done well, we're going to talk to you individually and say, okay, maybe this is something that you need to try again at, or no, you're good to move on to the next portion of the admissions process. So just do your best. If you have studied Arabic, go ahead, take that written assessment and do your best in it, inshallah. After completing the Arabic written assessment, literally upon completing it, you'll receive a link to schedule the oral assessment. So the oral assessment is actually with one of our admissions counselors, somebody who will be listening to you read a portion of the Quran. Again, we have that Quran reading portion. Again, we're just testing on whether you can read it, your fluency level in it, and reading a portion of a classical Arabic text and being able to translate the classical Arabic text. So for the Quran reading portion, you just have to be able to read it and try to read it as best as you can. And for the classical Arabic text, you're tested on reading it and translating it. The classical Arabic text does not have any harakat. It doesn't have any vowel markings. So you are tested on your fluency and understanding of your Arabic grammar. You do have to have, again, studied Arabic to be able to do well on that test. A lot of people ask, what percentage level of fluency you're looking at. A passing grade, meaning like a 70% fluency or above, is something that we're looking at. Meaning being 70% accurate in terms of your reading accuracy as well as translation accuracy. And again, right, like, you're talking to a real person. You're not just like, it's not just like a bot. You are talking to somebody. So we will assess accordingly. They will. You'll be advised, okay, you did great, you can move on to the next portion of the admissions process, or no, this is something that you need to maybe study a little bit more and be retested on. The retest will be on a different text. We're not going to test you on the same document, but we'll give you advice and thoughts on how to best prepare for that retest in the case that is something that you have to take. So after the testing process, so there's, like, to just summarize, there's a 2-part testing process. There is the written test, and then there is the oral test. After the testing process, we'll move you on to the next portion of that the seminary's admissions process, which is the interview. So you will again be interviewed by one of our alumni, senior students, and also part of the admissions team. The purpose of this interview is to really, again, interviews can seem very scary, but I don't want anybody to be nervous about it. Just very honest, right? We just want to make sure that you are a good fit for our program and our program is a good fit for you. It's just about fit to see if this is something that is going to work for both Qalam and for yourself. So following that interview, we check up on your references, see if everything's good to go, and then you'll receive the admissions decision. So admissions are done on a rolling basis. So that means as soon as all of the different parts of the admissions process are completed, we will go ahead and send you an admission. A lot of people ask about financial aid and scholarships and if they're available. Scholarships and financial aid, you can find that information on the website in terms of tuition and everything. But the way that we at Qalam work in terms of tuition and financial aid scholarships is that we don't think that finances should ever be a reason that should stop you from applying. We want the best and the brightest students to apply. We want everyone and anyone who to apply. As somebody who is part of the admissions process and part of the admissions team, whenever I work with admissions, my goal is to try to make sure that everyone who applies gets admitted into the program. My goal, personally speaking, is that I want everybody to be able to attend Qalam and to have the amazing experience that I did, if not better. So we're not trying to turn anybody away. The admissions process is not to limit anybody from coming. Rather, it's to make sure that you're put in the best position to be able to succeed in the program that you're in, whether it be Arabic or the seminary program. So if finances is a question for you, we actually deal with all of those questions after somebody has been admitted into the program, and we do what we can to figure out scholarships and financial aid for you. So that's in regards to tuition. Now, again, somebody had a question regarding part-time versus full-time. The Arabic program, it is completely full-time, but that doesn't mean that somebody who is working full-time has to attend classes live. You are able to take those classes, watch the recordings of those classes. Similarly, for a seminary student, right, an Islamic studies student, if you're taking that for seminary, it is available both part-time and full-time. Regardless, though, whichever commitment you have, you don't have to watch. If you're an online student, you do not have to watch the recordings live. You don't have to watch the classes live. You can watch the recordings after the class. So if you're an online student, you're not ever expected to watch it live. You have a specific TA that helps you and assists you and guides you along and tells you, these recordings have to be watched in this time frame, and these assignments have to be completed in this time frame, and you're guided accordingly. So I think that was it in regards to admissions. If you have any other questions related to admissions, you can go ahead and email the admissions@qalaminstitute.org email address, and I believe it will be put up on the screen for everyone to see if anyone has any questions. Yes, email admissions@qalaminstitute.org, or go to the website. There is a questions page. You can submit your questions there as well. But we will get back to you as soon as possible regarding whatever questions that you have, inshallah. So with that, I would like to go ahead and close off our session today with the fact that seeking pertinent Islamic knowledge is an obligation on every single Muslim, and we at Qalam work really hard to make that available to every single person in as many ways as possible. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us put barakah and tawfiq in all of our efforts, and all of our efforts, whether us at Qalam or you as well, in your application process, for all the students, for all the teachers, whether you're in person, you're online, full-time or part-time, whatever commitment that you have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts from all of us, and allows us to only continue in these efforts. Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.